Welcome back to another video. I'm Akhil. These videos are documenting my journey towards understanding the universe. So today we're going to be talking about a whole host of topics actually. But anyway, if you don't know who I am, my goal is to expand the scope and scale of productivity through the company of Adaro. And Adaro Solutions, currently what we're doing is I do lead follow-up for businesses. So like a business, they get leads every day from advertising. We follow up with those leads, book them for a consultation or whatever. Anyway, point is, there's a shitload of things to talk about. Okay, I mean, one of the spas canceled, another spa potentially might be canceling, so I might be losing every client. Okay, I might be losing every client. Okay, we doubled down on posting, so I have 6 months of content, basically twice a day posting content for the next 6 months is scheduled. We're going to be talking about advertising. We're going to be talking about posting. That shit was hell. Okay, posting is hell. We're going to be talking about and a whole host of other random miscellaneous topics that over the last month I've been thinking about. This video is probably one of the longer ones because of the whole host of random shit that I'm going to probably be talking about that is unrelated to the business. So yeah, let's get into the video. Obviously, as usual, we're going to be going through everything that happened since the last video. Right after, during the last video, basically we stopped off where I was helping out the dealership with their follow-up. That was kind of like the main thing going on. The dealership was giving me a trial. So and it was going well. So basically, I guess the lowdown is they didn't end up becoming a client, but the dealership, the trial itself went amazingly well. And, compared to what they were doing before, objectively, we got significantly more people showing up to their dealership. We got confirmed times for their dealership. We got, a bunch of shit that was really good for their dealership. Like time to lead was really good. Again, I don't know how much I explained last video, but basically they were in complete shambles as far as follow-up goes. Like some leads were getting followed up with, others that would message and then never get a response. And most of the leads were not getting, none of the leads were getting followed up with over multiple days. That's pretty much almost 100% true. I mean, they might be doing like, some random messaging here and there, but like there was no consistency or anything like that. There was no structure. There was no anything like that. So although this was true and the follow-up and the trial went really well, and originally the guy was like, oh yeah, I think this will work out really well. Basically, I can't, like, obviously follow-up is just one aspect of the business. And for them, their whole thing was like, their business itself, like their website wasn't functioning. So anytime we would send their website, essentially what would happen is I would send the link to their their dealership where they have all of their vehicles, right? And then somebody would click on the link and then it would go to their vehicles. They would click on a vehicle and then it would just like forward them to like a fragrance or like a cologne website or something completely different. And then sometimes you would click on a link and then it would forward you to like a handbag website. It was so, like, their website was so broken and it wasn't updated with any of their current inventory. It was all old inventory. So basically they had a lot of like functional problems on their side that there's nothing I can really do to fix. But basically, the overall case was I can't really obviously fix a failing business, and I think for them, in the end they were like, oh yeah, we're not sure. Like basically what happened is the trial ended, okay, and they're like, we'll get back to you. And then 1 week goes by, and I'm obviously following up consistent with them, like, hey, just checking in, every few days, like, hey, just checking in. Did you want to have a talk? You want to get on a call real quick? I know you said there was a couple things you wanted to work out and then get started on the paid service. And basically they just wouldn't respond. They basically essentially like stopped responding for like 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I was like, hey, just let me know. Do you want me to check back in like a few months, or like what was the situation? And then basically at the end of the day, they were like, oh yeah, I think we're good for now. Thank you. I appreciate your time. It worked out really well. Like you guys' follow up was really well. But right now we're just going through some other things. Blah blah blah. I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing really I can do about it. Yeah, it's a trial. In my opinion, objectively, yeah. From my side, all I can say is objectively, the system did everything that the system was supposed to do. We objectively did. Every single lead was followed up with. Nobody was missed. We got considerably more bookings, considerably more people coming in person, considerably more, volume of time to lead was significantly lower. Basically, everything that I can measure physically was better, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, is there really anything more that I can particularly do on my side? Like looking back on it, I can't really say, like, as far as the system goes, I feel like the system was pretty good. There are a couple things that I am going to be improving about the system in the next couple days, just as far as like how we display some of the information. But that's like mostly semantics. Like when it comes to actual, the lead follow-up was on point. So, I mean, what is my synopsis on this one, on this particular lead? I think the synopsis is it just may not have been the right fit because maybe their business just they didn't see the results. I mean, they did say the results were really good and they liked it, but maybe they just didn't see the return on investment. I'm not sure, but we didn't even get into pricing. Like I didn't even discuss pricing yet, so maybe they just I don't know what the situation is, but yeah. I mean, they didn't really give me any constructive criticism on like, hey, if you do this, then we could go with you, or hey, we didn't go with you because of X, Y, Z reason. They kind of just brushed it off, like, oh yeah, it was really good, but not right now, and they kind of said like, oh yeah, we're kind of just working on something internally. Well, not right now. Basically, they're just like, oh yeah, we'll let you know if we ever need you in the future. So it's like, okay, I don't know what I can really do with that information, but okay, thank you, I guess. But yeah, so. Aside from that, that's basically what happened to that. But aside from that, we can go into the actual what happened. So, one thing I did was on my side, I realized that if I'm having multiple spas at once, right, for like a caller, on my side itself, it was kind of getting laggy having so many tabs open at once. So what I did was I actually figured out what is the minimum viable tabs per spa or per business that has to be open at once. And then I basically edited the system so that any extra tabs that are related to that company will be just linked on a sheet. I guess this is kind of getting a little bit into the details, but basically I obviously know that if I'm going to be giving this to a caller, if there's too many tabs open on the screen, obviously I'm not expecting like a person from the Philippines to have a laptop that is like that's capable of like having 187 tabs open at once or some crazy shit, right? So it has to be reasonable, right? And if I have a decent computer, and if I'm already feeling like a little bit of lag, switching from spa to spa, then I think the goal should just be like, okay, hey, for each spa we have 3 to 4 tabs open. That way, you have maybe 4 or 5 spas at once. You can easily still make that work even with a not that great computer. So that's kind of like I kind of just made that fix during this time because I noticed that issue, and then I figured out. So basically, I figured out. Obviously, we have holiday days, right? Holiday days. Obviously, not coming up right now, but I was kind of thinking about like how are we going to do the holiday days? Because obviously there are certain days that we don't do the follow-up, but I don't want to turn off the automations because then I won't get those leads that come in. Those leads won't even register as coming into the system. I also don't want to like don't say anything because then the lead will be like, oh, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? So basically the solution that I came up with is just I'll turn on an automatic message that anybody who comes in will immediately receive a holiday like, hey, we'll get back to you in a few hours. Like if a lead comes in. So we'll get back to you. Sorry, not a few hours. We'll get back to you in a day. Because we're off for the holidays. So that should basically solve the problem. I was like going through like a few different things. Like, okay, can we turn off the messaging? What can I do? Can I put on do not disturb? But the most cleanest and simplest way is just sending a message. Hey, like after all the normal automations, like, hey, we're off today. We'll get back to you in a few days or whatever. So yeah, that's that. Other thing is, so during the same time, basically the ads are working. So the ads are working. They get consistent leads. Obviously during this time, I'm like iterating the ads. I'm making improvements, kind of finding the correct vector of which ads are actually like good and what I can double down on. There's a ton of different ad variety tests in terms of like changing this, changing that. I kind of at the same time kind of came down to like figuring out that okay, there's like one type of ad. It's kind of like a generic. It's kind of like it wasn't really spa specific, so it didn't say med spa in any of it, and it wasn't super basically it wasn't super big. It was just kind of like describing what we do and describing the problem. So it starts off with like your marketing isn't the problem. The problem is slow follow-up, and then kind of just goes into you guys get a lead, you guys you'll get a lead, they'll get one message and then they'll never get replied again, and this is kind of like a problem that we see in consistent businesses, blah blah blah. With us, we follow up with every single lead consistently over multiple days, and we have a free 7-day trial. Click the link below if you're interested. Basically, that's the synopsis of the ad. Obviously, there's a little bit more. I don't remember the exact fucking script, but that's basically what the ad is, and that was the most successful ad. And it was me talking to a camera, And I tried, so there was a couple different things that I tried in terms of landing pages, and I made a new landing page, and this was the most successful landing page because I included results. So I did this whole thing where I went back into my website, and then I went back through all of the trials that I did, and I got the results from every single trial, and I put it onto my website, and I put it onto the landing page. So the results from the first week trial, so like, I don't know, whatever, 100 leads called, and from XYZ, sources, and then, how many were booked, and then, all that information, the really simple, most important information, like, okay, 100 leads called, 4 leads booked, and then, whatever, we handled this lead source, that lead source, and this lead source, and all the leads were contacted within minutes. Just like 2 or 3, or 3 or 4, like, quick bullet points. I put that into my website, which I'll probably put like I don't know if I'll do a voiceover, but I'll probably put like a photo at least into the video of just like what it looks like. But just, I put those results into the website, and I put it onto the landing page, and I edited the landing page to make it look a little bit better. And so far, that landing page did better, so I kind of doubled down on that landing page. We'll get the ads, like what I'm doing with the ads exactly right now later, but that's kind of, around this time I also did that. Okay, so now we're getting into now it's like getting into April, and April, like the start of last month. So now it's like the start of May, so it's like May 3rd today. So we're going to start at the start of last month. So the start of April, basically, we got. I think I was talking about this last time, but we had a gym client. There was a gym. He was like a private. It's like a personal training gym. It's kind of like Alex Hormozy's 6-week challenge type gym. This is exactly like that. So this is like a 6-week challenge gym, and it's in like somewhere like Anaheim or something, and they were interested in having a follow-up thing. So I set them up for a trial, and I officially got them like set up around this time, like start of April. So I can kind of just go over what happened. So again, just like the dealership, this client went through the trial, and it was like really, really good. So they turned on the ads, and we were booking at like really high rates. We had like, out of the 120 leads, we booked like 30 people confirmed for a consultation. I think it was 35 actually, and then we were following up with their, like, I even helped follow up with their no-show leads. So like, so let's just say somebody books, and then they don't show up at the end of the day. They would get back into the system, and I would follow up with them again. I figured out how to do that very effectively and easily. So yeah, the trial went really well, and then afterwards, basically, they wanted to test another competitor who also offered marketing. So I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say anything. I'm like, okay, yeah, go ahead. And objectively, it's been like a week since last week they tested this competitor, and I actually have access to see what it looks like because they gave me access to their system, so I can actually see the competitor and their follow-up. And I mean, obviously you can't do a full one-to-one comparison because their advertising was the competitors doing their own advertising. I was doing it with the gym's advertising that they were doing themselves. So I guess it can't technically be a one-to-one comparison, but based on what I see, out of the same number of leads, if I just take like a sample size, I think they had like 70 leads. And that's basically about half of what I got. They only had, so we had like 35 leads. They only had like realistically like of their own, like only 10 leads. We had 35 from about 140. So if you divide that in half, that might be close to like 17 or whatever, 17 and a half. And they only had 10, right? So 70 to 10. And then if I do 70, cut it in half, what I did, 70 to 17 and a half. So we obviously booked more. Can I objectively say like, okay, well, they had different marketing though, so maybe they spent less. I don't really know, obviously, the details of the marketing spend or what the quality of the ad was or anything like that. But just on a paper basis, okay, I had more bookings. But also, forget the bookings for a minute. Obviously, yeah, we could say numbers. Who knows what that means? Because there's different marketing. So can you really say mine is better or worse? Okay, forget that for a second. Just looking at the actual follow-up, like, in terms of like quality of follow-up and how fast and how effective it is, they're using, I obviously have access to see it, and I already know a lot about GHL and all this stuff. So they're using an AI bot to do a lot of the follow-ups, and then if somebody's interested in booking, they have a real human kind of just chime in, give them a call or something. And the real human is obviously a virtual assistant from like the Philippines, and obviously I hear all the recordings, and from what I can see, the AI is just naturally not going to be nearly as good as a human in terms of booking people onto an appointment, and I can already see that. So basically, what happens is a lead will reach out, and then the AI will go into like a fucking like questionnaire. It'll ask like 8 questions before it even thinks about asking to book. And within those 8 questions, a lot of the leads who are interested may actually end up dropping off. They just stop responding because there's so many questions instead of just getting to the consultation of booking. You know what I'm saying? And the point for me is like, okay, if you go, a lot of these clients, they're responding to an ad. They just want to get into the consultation, and then they want to actually talk to a real person at the consultation that actually understands their needs, instead of talking to an AI and then the AI books the consultation and the person at the consultation has to re-ask all those questions. It doesn't really make any sense, honestly. But from just quality of follow-up and from the calls that I heard from them, the recordings, it's just like there's a lot of unnecessary questions and a lot of in terms of quality of follow-up. Objectively, my system is better. In terms of like the lead itself, I don't know how much they see of that. The person, the owner, the business owner, I don't know how much they see of that. I don't know how much they care. From what I know, I honestly don't know if they're going to go with us or them. Most likely, just because they offer marketing as well, they'll probably just go with them. There's not really much I can do about that. The reason I say that is because I haven't heard back from him, and I checked him with a couple of times, and I haven't heard back from this guy, the owner. And also, he actually ended up sending me a missed text that I think was supposed to be to the competitor, just like, oh yeah, I like it. Let's increase the ad spend. So probably they're gonna go with them. But objectively, again, can I say specifically that do I see any way to improve on my end? Because at the end of the day, I don't really give a shit. If this guy goes with whatever he does. My point is, okay, on my system, is there anything I can do to improve? Is there anything I can do to make my system better for the end consumer? And from what I can see, I mean, I did get significantly more bookings. I mean, we followed up consistently. Time to lead was very good. Is there anything specifically that I feel like I can improve? Again, there was a couple things like as far as display-wise, displaying information that I noticed that I think I'm going to make that improvement. But that is not materially affecting the follow-up in any way. That's just like how you display the information. But yeah, obviously I don't offer marketing, so that might be like a downside. But at the end of the day, can I really? I'm not going to offer marketing, so can I really change that? No. But yeah, I think it's at the end of the day. Is there something I need to change? Is there fundamentally is it like a bigger problem? Like, oh, there's no market for the product, or there's no this, or there's not. I feel like there is a need for the product. I feel like it does require the right business to fit into. I feel like we still need more volume to determine whether if there's anything specifically wrong with the system, or if there's anything specifically wrong with the business model as a whole. Right? It's too early to say. I think this is like one example. I can't really. Again, did the system work? Yes. Is there anything I can take away from the loss and improve? I can't really see anything objectively that I did wrong that I necessarily need to change for next time. But at the end of the day, we'll see, right? I guess it just requires more volume. If at the end of the day you have, right now it's still too small of a sample set. I've only done 5 or 6 trials, and out of those 5 or 6 trials, what do you call it? Two became a client. And yeah, out of those 5 or 6 trials, 2 became a client. And then one of those clients churned out after 6 months. We'll get into that later. And then the other one, I'm not sure, might churn in a little bit. I'm not sure. We'll see. But other than that, is it enough sample size to say either way? No. You'd have to have at least, at this point, from what I know, I'd have to have at least like 10 or 15 more trials before I can say anything definitively. And I have to see like, okay, consistently I'm getting this response, consistently I'm getting this response, or consistently people are going through the trial. Results, what I think are good, maybe people are not seeing it's good. That means something has to fundamentally change. But right now, I think it's just too early to say anything definitively. I think it just requires. Sometimes it just might not be. Out of 10 spas or 10 businesses or whatever, 3 of them might be a fit, and 7 of them might not be a fit. But if I can't say anything until I get that sample size, right? You might get the first 7 first, right? And the next 3 are really good or whatever. It's really hard to say when you're such a small sample set. Ideally, you get like 15, 20, 30 trials, then you can say, okay, I went through this many trials. I can see that there's a recurring theme, like people are going through the trial and they're not signing up, or people are saying this, or people are requiring that I do marketing, or then I can at least have like some data to say. It's still a bit too early, in my opinion, to have any definitive answers. But there are still things I can do to improve. Like I said, I'll get into the displaying of information. But yeah, that's kind of what happened for that trial. All right, so at this point, it's now like April. It's like April, like I don't know, like 9th, 8th, 9th. So this is the time where I was like analyzing what I should do. So the ads are going on, right? And I don't have the budget to like obviously spend more on ads, because I was already spending about like $50, $60 a day, and like any more, like with the the amount coming in. Right, like I was getting like $12.50 from the 2 spas. So the amount coming in and all the, like, obviously I have static, like, base fees and all that shit. So at the end of the day, if I was spending $60, I calculated I would be burning like $1,000 a month, which is doable. It's fine, because I have, some money saved up. But spending any more, obviously, that would be like too much, because then, I'd be like running out of all my money within like 2 months. So I don't want to do that. So I was like, okay, $60 a month is good at this time. And I was like thinking about other ways to do it. I didn't have any like what else should I do? Because I didn't want to do any cold texting. Cold texting is expensive, not really worth the ROI and time. And I haven't really gotten any good leads from cold texting. So then I was like kind of thinking, okay, what is the best thing to do? So then I realized, okay, right now I think it's a good opportunity to double down on the content, the organic content. So like my posting on Instagram, Facebook, all that shit. And that way, if I double down on this and I schedule it out, for multiple months, then basically I'll have, over years, if I consistently do this for years, and obviously, everything, kind of works out business model wise. If I consistently schedule this out for years, what I'll gain is a base of, just like a base of, like, I guess you could say, what do you call that? An audience, a base of audience. You'll have like at least some form of, like audience. You'll have some form of like followers. You'll have some form of like, okay, like there's a base of people that actually understand who you are, and you're like a legitimate company because you've been posting for that, like hundreds of posts over years. So I doubled down on the content. First, I started off with, okay, I want to just post once every day, on every single platform. So I got like this scheduler. It's only $20 a month, and I also filmed a shit ton of shorts. This is like a painstakingly annoying process, but I filmed, like, what I noticed is like, okay, I can use each short 3 times, right? So basically I'll use it once now, once in a month, and then maybe once another month or and a half after that. So I can use that same short 3 times. So for every short that I film, that's essentially 90 days worth of content, because I can use that short 3 times. So if sorry, not for each short I film, for each 30 shorts I film, that's 90 days worth of like content. Obviously not, like, I can't use it, like those 30 shorts, like, back to back. Like, I can't use it. Obviously, day one I use one short, and then I use the same short again a couple days after. But what I'm saying is, like, I can use that short 3 times. So you get what I'm saying. So anyway, the point is, for me to do once a day, I filmed like a whole batch of like 20, and then another batch of 20, and then I went back and I used all of my advertising content. So all of the advertising, I made like many short type videos for the ads. It was like close to 20. So basically I had a bunch that were already like basically essentially like created. So I used those again, obviously. So now the point is, I'll post a short video one day, then the next day I would post like a still image, right? Like an AI generated image that shows follow up, like like something like speed to lead, like it'll be like a person running, and it's important to have speed to lead, or something, something simple that gets across one of the main points. So you need to be fast, you need to be consistent over multiple days, something that kind of gets at a core angle of lead follow up. You can kind of look at my page if you want to just get a better idea of what that actually looks like. But one AI generated image, then the next day again it'll be shorts. So shorts, image, and then shorts again. So this I did this, and then I scheduled it out for up to, I think, about like 4 months originally. So I considered this layer 1. I scheduled it out for 4 months. At this point, I realized that I still had a little bit extra time. So the best opportunity next would be to do what I call layer 2. So instead of just having one short every other day, now I'll be doing one short every day. So on the day, I guess this might be getting, hopefully it's not getting confusing, but basically layer 1 is short, still, post, short, right? So then layer 2 would just be post, short, still, post, short, still, post, short. You know what I'm saying? So basically every single day you'll get one short, and then one still, post, one still, post, one short. So you're getting a short every day and a still, post every day. So that's what I consider layer 2. So I did this, and I filmed like a shitload, literally a shitload of shorts. So I created in total like so many shorts, right? Like, I think the total number of shorts that I created in the last like 3-4 weeks is like, I think it's like 70 or something. I think it's 3 batches. It's either 2 or 3, I can't remember, but it's a shitload of shorts. And then yeah, for the layer 2, it required a shitload. And then I also used a couple. Also, what I did at the same time, which is, I guess, kind of a tangent, but I also wanted to, you know what? I'll get into this tangent after. Forget it. This is kind of like, it's a big tangent. So I did this layer 2. We're getting back to content now. We'll go on the tangent in a minute. But so what I did is I filmed all these shorts. I got them all posted and scheduled. And basically just as of like 4 days ago, I finally finished all this shit. Oh my God. It is so annoying to sit down and schedule all this shit. Oh my God. But because like, again, you have to go through, okay? And then I obviously filmed all of these shorts. I had to edit all these shorts. And then I exported all these shorts. And then I put them obviously onto the scheduling tool, and I made a unique description for every single short, okay? So, and then I actually posted it on every single day, which is a lot. So I did it up to 6 months. So basically, starting today, actually, there will be 2 posts. The last month, it was just obviously the 1 post, 1 still post, 1 short, 1 still post. But now it's 2, so you'll get 2 a day, starting today, until November. So that's like 6 months, right? So it's obviously today's May. This month's May, the start of May. Until like mid-November, I have everything scheduled. So like, and these are the creative things because like at the start, like they're changing. Like as in like I'll be able to actually see. Like I did so many different types of angles here that at the by month 3 I'll have a good idea of like okay what's working, what's not. So then I can by month 3 I can make a whole bunch more, and then I'll have the next gajillion years scheduled. Not like forever, but you know what I'm saying. Like I'll have like I can basically I only have to make like every 3 months like 30 shorts per layer. So I guess 60 shorts. So every month I only have to make like 20 shorts or something, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually really not that much. Because when you're doing it all at once, in the last 3 weeks I made like so many shorts. It's a pain. But when you do it like okay, like every so often I'll film like a batch of 5 or 10 shorts, and then I'll just edit them and then post them whenever I have time. It doesn't take that long. It only takes 10 minutes to edit a short. And it takes like, when I film it, it's really easy for me to film like 10, 15, 20 shorts in the matter of like 30, 40 minutes. So it's really not that bad. It's just really, really annoying when you're doing all of it at once and you're kind of figuring out, how to schedule, how to get all these descriptions efficiently, how to get all the still images efficiently. It's annoying to do all of that at the starting end. But now that I have a base of 6 months, it makes it so much easier to continue that on. It's not really that hard to continue on. And I'll be making more ads, so I'll be able to add on to both layers more and more. Anyway, aside from all that, point is, next 6 months of organic posts is scheduled, which was total pain, but I think it's totally worth it because now I don't have to really do much except, once in a while add more shorts to the end so that I'm always around 5 to 6 months ahead. Maybe 3 to 6 months. I want to be ideally 3 to 6 months ahead. Why? Because that just gives me a good buffer room in case I get really busy or something. I always have a good leeway before I have to make more shorts. But yeah, I guess worst case scenario, you can always take the shorts that are like, let's just say the 6 months goes by. Obviously, there are the shorts that I originally used really early on that I already did 3 times. I could probably take, if worst case scenario, I could always take those shorts that haven't been seen for the last like 3-4 months and then push them back in. It's not that big of a deal, but yeah. Point is, something is being posted every single day, a video of me every single day, and a still image kind of just showing something about lead follow-up every single day. Okay, now we can get into that tangent that I was talking about. So what is that tangent? Tangent is this. So there's obviously this company. I don't know why I just said obviously. That has no context, but whatever. Anyway, so there's this company called Medvi, right? And if you look up online, it's obviously that they keep saying obviously. What is wrong with me? Anyway, it is basically this company that is. They were very quick to get to $1 billion valuation or some shit like that. They had like $1 billion in revenue. I don't really know the entire story, but basically, if you actually look into it, it's kind of like a little bit fake or whatever. CoffeeZilla did like a whole thing on how this company is not really like legit or whatever. I'm not sure. I don't really know what the fuck the company is doing. But anyway, the point is this. That's not really what I was interested in. What I was interested in is their advertising. So they were advertising on Facebook, and they were using like AI-based like avatars to say stuff. They were completely like faking it. Like they were using like AI doctors and shit. I'm not gonna do that, obviously. In my head, I was thinking, okay, wait, actually, hold on. You could actually technically create fake AI customers. Like I could be like, oh, I could create like an AI person that says I used Adaro Solutions and they got me X business. But I'm not gonna do that. That's just unethical, honestly. I don't want to fake testimonials or something like that. That's just like not right. But what I did think was like, I could do is like I could just do the same type of things that I'm saying as an ad, just in an AI, like a voice or avatar or whatever, just to see if that actually gets better results, because Medvi's clearly having results. So maybe I can try testing, not just that, but also just like more varieties. It's also I just wanted to test the AI version, like through this company. It's called HeyGen AI, and basically they do like, it actually looks really realistic. It actually looks so realistic that it actually makes it look fake, in the sense that the quality is so good that it makes it look fake. Like nobody has that good of camera quality on their camera, when they're filming. So obviously that makes it look fake. But point is, I did test it. I did test. So basically, I made like AI, and I also did AI case studies. So instead of saying, my spa got X much business because of Adaro Solutions, that's obviously fake. But what I can do, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, that's not right. I actually like sat down and I was like, this is like, what is the long-term ROI? And the long-term ROI is doing anything like that is just wrong. It's not going to get you long-term business, because again, okay, you can maybe get extra leads out of faking it, but then somebody's going to find out, obviously, or even if nobody finds out, it's like you're making that like an internal thing. Then obviously next time when you're going to make a decision like this, you're going to probably lean towards faking it again. It's just not right, honestly. It's just long-term. It's not going to get you towards your goals to fake reviews or fake testimonials or do all this shit. So, but what I can do is a case study, right? Like, okay, like we helped this business within the first week, within the trial. This is like based on real data. Like within the trial, within the first week, we helped solve 50% of their missed calls. Like we handled 50% of their missed calls, and that resulted in 3 or 4 or whatever bookings. I forgot the number, but we could say like a case study. So I did test that too. That didn't get that many leads. I mean, the thing is, they do get leads. Like these AI versions, they get leads. Like these AI ads, they do convert. They get people to click on a landing page and they get people to enter their information, but just not as good as a human like me when I do it. So yeah, I mean, it does convert to a degree, but is it as efficient as just having me speak to the camera? No, at least not yet. So, and I even tried having an AI avatar say exactly word for word what I said, but still no similar conversion. I still got conversions, but just it was at a worse rate than me saying it. So why would I do that? Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I did test that, and I did obviously use those same ads on my organic posting. It was only like 3 or 4 that I made, but yeah. The point is, I'm not against testing things, including the AI thing. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's just life. But yeah. So also during the same time, since I was scheduling, I realized the extra effort to schedule on other platforms is not that much. So I opened up a Twitter account for the Adaro solution. Not that I think anybody's going to come from Twitter. But I also opened up Twitter and a Google My Business, and I think that was it. No, I think I had a LinkedIn page too. Oh yeah, I started posting on the LinkedIn page too. So yeah, basically the reason I did that is because the marginal effort for me to just copy, basically I use like Metricool, which is like a scheduling platform. The extra effort for me to copy it onto that extra platform is really low. Since I'm already making the content, I may as well just display it on every platform that I possibly can. So now it's displayed on, because I'm using a scheduler, I'm also displaying the same content on more platforms. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how many business owners are like on Twitter looking for like, like scrolling, trying to find lead follow-up companies. But hey, you never know. Just post it. I post everywhere on every single platform, Facebook, Instagram. I think we're at what? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So that's like 6 platforms. And then Google My Business, I put the photos on there. Like, like when you look up at a business and you get photos, I'm putting all of the still images as photos onto Google My Business. So yeah, I guess that's 6, 7 platforms. So that's pretty cool. I mean, hopefully, I'm not expecting it obviously to get any leads now or anything. The whole point is like, I already know organic content is one of those like, it's like one of those long-term type of things. Like, you post now twice a day, and you're gonna get leads maybe like 3 or 4 years down the line. You have to consistently post twice a day for years, and then over time you kind of like build an audience, and then stuff like that. And then you probably eventually, once you actually like make it, once you actually have like a consistent product and consistent service and all of that shit, then years later, then you start getting leads from the organic content after you test obviously multiple different types of content, all that shit. But that's the point. That's the goal in the organic content. The goal is not to necessarily get leads today, but to build a base of audience. That's why we can get leads, months or years from now. But yeah, basically the entire month, like mid to late month, was just making shorts, editing them, putting it on, and then also the trial for those 2 spots. Like the what do you call it? The dealership and then the gym. And then I did a bunch of minor fixes. Like, okay, I realized, okay, like these are like super duper minor things, like on the reporting side, some other shit. We'll get into the other one, the other thing that I'm working on. I'm gonna do now. But yeah, around the same time, I changed vehicles. Well, actually, we downsized. I don't need a car anymore because I don't go anywhere. So I just walk. The gym is actually walking distance, so I don't even need a car. So we got rid of that. I don't like. There's no need in having a car. Like you don't need to have a second insurance, or sorry, third insurance, third. Set. You're gonna have to because 3 cars obviously. So it's downsize to 2, get 2 better cars, right? That are safer instead of having like 3 old shitty cars. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and I mean, I guess most people my age would probably be like, oh, I don't want to lose my own vehicle. But honestly, for me, I don't really care. And I actually is the one who wanted to get rid of it because it's like why, It's like I'd rather have 2 safe vehicles that I never have to drive that I know, my family's gonna be safe in, or rather than having 3 not so safe vehicles. You know what I'm saying? That I don't even use a 3rd vehicle, so it's like I don't go anywhere. I have no friends, so you know what I'm saying? So like, why do I need a car? I don't do anything. So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that was like that shit, trading in the car and all that. But anyway, after that was around the end of the month. Main thing was I just finished like at the start of this month all of that posting, and then I just got to okay. So this is the cool thing, the ads. So here's the thing. So recently, like I said, there was like this generic ad, blah, 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 that I did. So in the last 3 days, basically I realized, okay, so the 2 target markets that I want to target, like I kind of seen now at this point, dealerships, I kind of saw the spas, and I kind of saw the gym, right? And I got calls from all kinds of different businesses, right? I got like the leads that I was getting I got leads from all kinds of different businesses. I got leads from like this internet marketing company. I got leads from like a insurance guy. Like as in like I got like people calling me and explaining their business and how potentially I might be able to help. Insurance guy. I got like what was this other one? A dentist guy that I called today. He didn't pick up, but he's potentially thinking about starting a trial. But anyway, I got all these leads and I realized that I really just kind of want to target spas and gyms right now. Like all the rest of them are like, the dealership was like, it's okay. It's not really the ideal market, but the spa, right, is really good because I already have 2 clients that are spas. And then the gym, the 6-week challenge gym was really good because it's a very simple book to consultation. There's no need for any specific like treatment understanding or really specific questions. The leads are very like simple to get to book into a consultation. Most gyms don't require a deposit. I think just overall, it's a very clean and simple, and it's kind of the high ROI thing that I think, because gyms get a lot of leads. Like the 6-week challenge, like membership type gyms, they get a lot of leads, but obviously, like between trainers and all this shit, they're probably like, busy training, doing shit. So they're going to probably be not as good as following up as, a follow-up service. So I basically made like not rethought, but I just took the winning ad, right? And the winning landing page. And I really I looked at it and I analyzed it and I was like, how can I make this better? And I just did the same type of template, except I made a spa specific ad and then a gym specific ad. With the gym specific landing page that just slightly altered my winning landing page just to make it more gym-like, and then slightly altered my spa landing page to make it more spa-like. I finished this yesterday, and actually I posted the ads yesterday. And yeah, I got all of that, kind of like figured out. Like, they're good now. They're up and running. And I really wanted these 2 specific things, and I'm gonna let these run for a couple weeks so that I can really kind of see, if these specific niches are gonna get more leads than the generic one or what the situation is. Anyway, point is, the reason I'm doing more ads now is because I got really lucky in stocks, like really lucky, right? Because I invested like pretty much my entire like life savings, most of it, into AMD. And if you know anything about AMD stock, I invested in AMD like 80 to 120, like I think 80 to 140. My average I think is like somewhere around like 120. It was 120. I didn't sell out everything, but 120. So my average is 120. If you know what AMD stock is right now, so within the last like year, AMD has been going on like the craziest bull run of all time. AMD right now is at 360, bro. So it's a 3x. That's a 3x. So my life savings I invested into there, which was like at the time, I think it was what? I think it was like 25K is what I invested into AMD at the time, right? And obviously that 3x, right? That 3x. And before that, I had a really good thing with Shopify. So that 25K, most of it actually came from, I think, Shopify doubling. So I invested and then it doubled. And then before Shopify, it was Tesla. So this is like all from real estate. Again, I didn't really make that much money from real estate, but I obviously didn't spend anything, and I put it all into stocks, right? And then originally I bought Tesla, and then I Tesla like I think 1.3 or 1.5x my money, and then I was like, okay, Tesla is pretty volatile. I don't fuck this, fuck Tesla. Like I like Tesla, obviously, I like the like the cars that they make, the company, all that shit. But the stock is so volatile that I'm good. And if you actually look at Tesla's performance in the last 5 years, if you bought it in 2020 and you held to now, you probably didn't make that much money. So you actually think you lost money because I think Tesla's like 360 right now. And if Tesla was like, I don't know. But anyway, Tesla's like one of those like crazy shit stocks. It's like, it's much hypier than the actual company, which AMD is right now, but it's much hypier than the company is actually worth because, people pay a premium for Elon. Nothing against the company or Elon or anything, but I just don't want to be like, paying a premium for something that isn't, I'm not sure. Because like at the end of the day, if Tesla can't deliver on their like robotaxi or Tesla can't deliver on their humanoid robots, the stock is going to go through like a really long, stagnation time frame. But anyway, enough about that. So basically, obviously Shopify I bought, I like doubled and I sold that shit. And I saw a good deal in AMD, I bought that shit. But anyway, what does that mean? Why am I even bringing all this up? Well, because AMD like had like this crazy bull run, I ended up selling like almost probably 25-30% of what I was holding in AMD. And now that gave me like a solid like 20K. So now I can take this 20K, and it's like a totally random windfall basically. So I can take this 20K now, and now I have like multiple months of ad spend, like almost a year, probably 7-8 months of ad spend now that I can use so that I have so that I can actually spend more on ads right now. So I'm gonna slowly start spending a little bit more on ads. So now instead of like $60 a day, I'm probably gonna hit like 90 or close to 90 to 120 a day. And yeah, that allows me for a little bit more testing, so I can test 3 ads at once, each at $30 a day. And yeah, hopefully that gets me more leads, and then I can get more trials into that. But yeah, basically that bull run essentially gave me a good amount to test ads with, which most of that bull run happened in the last like month. Like AMD like last month was like 250, which obviously is pretty good gain. I mean, I just didn't want to sell that. These are like mainly long-term holdings. Like I didn't like plan on selling AMD. That wasn't my goal, but it just like shot up so much. At this point, the entire fucking like AI stock bubble. There's like a fucking bubble going on over here. I'm telling you, there's no reason that AMD should be worth 560 billion market cap when their revenue is like 34 billion. And I mean, they did have a good revenue like hit, but I don't know if it's like if you actually look at the financials, is it worth how much like how much the price to earnings is like some crazy freaking number. I don't even know. It's like I think it's like in the hundreds or some crazy shit. But yeah, I didn't even know like why. I don't know. This is like basically super hype. I mean, again, I'm a long-term person in general. Like my goal when I was buying AMD like last year was just to hold it for like 5 or 10 years. I assumed like, oh yeah, five or 10 years, it'll become like a bigger, stronger company. So it's a good long-term hold. But when prices are shooting up this fast, I mean, I'm probably not gonna have to pay any tax too, because if I spend all of that money onto ads, then not all of it, but if I spend most of it on ads, I mean, I have like 6 months left of the year, and if you assume if I double my ad spend, I double my burn rate from 1,000 to like maybe 2,000 or 3,000, within 6 months, I basically spent the entire thing. So I won't probably have to pay very much. I mean, I don't need to spend the entire thing to not pay taxes, but the goal is to test as much as I can, iterate, and get the most knowledge so that I can then make a decision. The point is, to expand the scope and scale of productivity. Money has no good if it's just sitting in the fucking bank or sitting in stocks doing nothing. So I may as well take that, apply it to my I totally lost my train of thought. My ads, and see what happens. So that's the goal there, and that's why I now have more to play around with ads. Obviously, that doesn't mean I'm gonna like spend money like fucking crazy on ads, but that does mean I'm gonna sit down, really analyze. I have more time to test now. So like I said, I can do that really spot specific test and that gym specific test. So now, testing. Let's see. Hopefully one of these work out, because oh yeah, I forgot to say this one thing. The last few weeks. So that once the first ever spot, $500 a month, officially is going to be canceling at the end of this billing cycle. So why is this happening? Well, I mean, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. For the last like month, they essentially got rid of all their marketing, because I guess I don't know what it is with their spot, but they just like, the owner just like really is, I don't know, like, she's like, I don't know, she just doesn't like any of the marketing companies, even though they get consistent leads and bookings. I don't know, maybe she has like really unrealistic expectations of marketing. I'm not sure. But it was a good, I think I was with her for like almost 4 or 5 months now. So, I mean, it was good. I mean, at the end of the day, is she canceling because of anything I'm doing wrong? Not really. She said she's going to replace it with like an internal person, but I can see the internal person because I have access to their account and the internal person is following up far slower and less consistently than we do. So I'm like, okay, hey, it's not, I have nothing to say, man. I have nothing to say. It's like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to say anything. But and then she said, oh yeah, the internal person is getting more bookings. I'm like, okay, hey, if that's the case, more power to you guys. I'm happy for you guys. If they're actually getting more business and truly getting more bookings from their internal person, that's great. Some of that might just be the fact that, a lot of the leads they're getting, they have such variable, like they have like a new offer every week. So, and they're not updating me on my side of their new offer, and they constantly have glitches on their side on the scheduling. So a lot of the leads, they come in, like let's just say a missed call lead or a Yelp lead. They see an ad, or they call in about an ad that they see on Instagram, and then obviously the front desk doesn't pick up the call, so the missed call will go to me. Then they ask me about the ad, and then I don't know, so I just say, oh yeah, well, we could schedule for a consultation. And the lead is like, oh no, I'm not interested, and then goodbye. So there's not much I can really do there. Or they'll be like, okay, yeah, sure, I want a consultation, and then I'll go onto the calendar and there's no open spots for like the next 3 weeks. So I don't know. I already told them like, hey, you guys have a really glitchy scheduling system. Could you guys, kind of fix that? And they're like, oh, I'm not sure, blah, blah, blah. It's like, bro, there's only so much I can really do as a follow-up system. You know what I'm saying? I can follow up with leads. I can call them within minutes. I can text them, but I can't do anything if I'm not able to book, or you guys aren't giving me the information about current offers or the stuff that you're doing. It's really hard for me to kind of do that, anything like that. For the other spa, their price is increasing to $9.95, and I'm just not sure if they're going to continue to be at $9.95 again, because the other spa, they only are having missed calls and they only have like 40 or 50 leads a week, which yeah, I mean, it's like, are they getting an ROI objectively? Yes. Is the margins pretty thin? Yes, too. If they were getting like 75 leads a week and they were getting like multiple, like I've told them like, hey, we're not going to raise the price if you give us more lead flow, but they haven't gotten any new marketing and it's still just the same missed calls and most of them are spam. So I don't know. What do you want me to do right there? I don't know what you want me to do. So I may have 0 clients going forward, like in the next like month or two. I'm not sure. We may have 1, we may have 0. Hard to say. Or maybe I'll get another client soon. I'll run another trial. Maybe maybe another lead will come in and I'll run a trial. Who knows? But for now, that's kind of where we're at. I think we're basically all caught up. Last couple of days was just making those like new ads and landing pages after I finally finished all of the organic content. Oh shit. Oh yeah. I also checked out. So remember that the competitor I was saying that also did lead follow up. So I was checking their ads too, just to see if there's anything I could do to improve my ads. Their ads are honestly kind of just like a worse version of my ads. So they're talking about lead follow up, and it's just like lower quality. And yeah, is there anything I can really take away? Not really. Except maybe I can kind of make that again that gym specific, because the competitor was kind of like a gym specific. So maybe I can, like I said, make like the landing page more gym specific, on the landing page more spa specific, stuff like that. Oh yeah, I did say I would get to this. So what am I going to fix? So right now in the system, right, I made it dead simple so that you can see the metrics, you can see the conversations, and you can see the conversation recordings, right? But I feel like what is missing that could help, that maybe an owner doesn't really get to see firsthand, is the consistency and the amount of days I follow up with each lead, right? So that's not really that clear, and I guess it could be more clear. I'm not sure how much of an ROI this will have, but it's really not. After looking into it, it doesn't look too hard for me to build. It doesn't look too complicated. I already kind of have the thing going on. Basically, what I mean is this. So a lead comes in, right? I follow up with them over 4 days. I call them, text them, email them day 1, call them, text them, email them day 2, email them day 3, and then text message them, final text message on day 4. All of that is not super clear to an owner, like how much follow-up is going into it, and how well worked every single lead is getting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the opportunities tab to kind of display that. So, if they click on the opportunities tab, they'll be able to say, okay, they'll be able to see like, okay, on day 1, there are like X leads. Day 2, there are, or day 1, there's like 10 leads. Day 2, there are like 4 leads. Day 3, there are like, 3 leads. Day 4, you see what I'm saying? So they'll be able to see like, okay, these leads are kind of like moving through the pipeline, like a visualization of the pipeline. And then I'll probably have like booked, right? Just like one column that says booked in the last 7 days. So you'll be able to see like, okay, this is the current pipeline. We have 4 people that are booked here in the last 7 days. That's pretty cool. It makes it like a little bit more visual. It's a minor improvement, yes. Does it directly make me more money? No. But do I think, especially for during the trial time, will it be a little bit more, will it display kind of like the effort, the service that we provide in a more effective way? I think so. Is it taking away from anything else? No. Is it replacing the metrics? No. How easy is it for me to implement this? I already follow up with them over multiple days anyway.
All right, so right now before the update, this is currently the metrics tab. Um, and this is kind of, so basically there's only really three tabs that like a person on the receiving end would have access to. It's like the metrics, of course. They'd be able to see any conversations, and of course they'd be able to see any contacts. That's basically it. And then in reporting too, which is like over here, they'd also be able to kind of just see like some reporting stuff with the like just like call recordings and stuff. Obviously this is a blank account, so there's nothing in it, but that's basically what it would look like. But basically, this new update will basically make it so it looks like this, right? It'll give an extra little tab that'll look like this, and that'll be like basically like a 7-day pipeline, or not 7 days, sorry, a 4-day pipeline along with the booked in the last 7 days. Basically, this just kind of visually shows the leads that are currently in the pipeline. So between day one, day two, day three, and day four, the leads will kind of just automatically move from each step. And then if a lead is booked, it'll get put into this step. And that way, any owner can kind of get like a good visual of, like on a day-to-day level, like what are the actual follow-ups that are going on, and who is where in the system. I Obviously this doesn't necessarily like directly increase revenue in any way, but it's not exactly a giant build. It only took me like, a couple hours to build it, and I feel like it does, kind of display the information in another way that's that at the end of the day might add value in the sense that it displays information another way, obviously, and then that could be valuable for a business owner. So yeah.
So like I send call, text, and email on day one anyway. I'll just have to add an extra step that says add to day one pipeline. Then on day two, I'm going to send a call, text, and email anyway. So I'll just put move to day two pipeline. And then day three, the same thing. Day four, same thing. And then if I book, I'll just add an extra step, move to booked pipeline. It's really not that complicated for me to implement. But yeah, I mean, I'll implement it and see if that makes a difference. I don't know. I don't know if that's the main issue. I don't know if the main issue right now is just like volume, because I feel like the main issue is just volume. I feel like if I just get more trials, eventually, a few will pan out into actual consistent clients. I feel like currently to this point, there's only been one company, one business that I really fit right, and that was the gym, because we were consistently getting leads, consistent bookings, a lot of bookings, and it was very simple, and the follow-up really helped. But if they go with like a person who does marketing, not much I can do about that. But if I can get more companies, if I get more trials that are like that, I guarantee if I get out of 5 trials that I get of a similar company, of that same type of company or business, I feel like if I get 5 of those, out of that, maybe 2 or 1 or 2 at least will become paid clients, and that'll obviously pay for the rest. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I don't know what churn is going to look like. I know what churn actually is in reality, because again, if at the end of the day, the 2 clients that I currently have, the one that first churned out wasn't a right fit, because fundamentally the business is just, she has many different, the spot, it just like, I feel like it was at obviously a really low rate. I feel like she didn't really understand follow-up or how, I don't know, maybe I'm just going, I'm just saying shit right now, but I feel like the 2 clients I have right now are still not ideal fits for the business. So I don't know. I feel like it's just a volume game. But yeah, anyway, that's basically where we're at in terms of everything that happened since the last video. We got everything from more posting to the 2 trials to everything. So and the new ads. So yeah, we'll get into the now other topics that I want to talk about. All right. So let's get into the next topics. Fair warning, I'll probably be bouncing a lot through like many different topics and many different tangents and many different ideas. So if it sounds like an incoherent mess, well, that's just life. Anyway, so first things first. I remember I was just saying about how that spot, I kind of saw the one that canceled officially, how the writing on the wall was kind of there. The first thing was when they started asking me to do like almost way too much. Like they were asking me to get on like weekly meeting calls with them for no real reason. Like it's just like, oh yeah, join a Zoom with us every meet. Like hold up. That doesn't make any sense. And yeah, they were just asking me like to do a bunch of shit that just doesn't make any freaking sense. So I kind of just noted this down as like, yeah, at the end of the day, we provide a service. Our goal is not to like fucking become part of the company, or like in the sense like obviously we want to be an integral part of their follow-up system, but our goal is not to like our goal is not to like be on a fucking like a follow-up call every morning with them or something, unless there's like a justifiable reason to do so. But just joining a call and then wasting time, it's just like and then doing extra things that just don't make any sense. They don't add to the bottom line or anything. It's just like what is the scope and scale of what we're trying to deliver? How can we consistently deliver productivity to a company? That is what we need to be focusing on. What is the maximum per unit time investment that we can do to get the maximum amount of productivity on the outside, right? The goal is like, okay, if I'm going to be investing this amount of hours into this company every single day, right? Not only are they getting the productivity, right? But are we actually like, are we creating, one is obviously, can we create more productivity for the time invested? And two is this the most useful use of time, right? What is obviously the goal is to just maximize the output per unit of time spent. But yeah, my goal is like, at the end of the day, clients come and go. The point is we have to stick to consistency and the scope, right? Because the moment you start messing with the scope, then you start getting into places where it's inconsistent, right? Like, oh, for one client I do this, for another client I do this, for another client I do that, and then it fucking becomes impossible to manage. It doesn't make any fucking sense. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the entire, I was kind of referencing this earlier with the hype around like, AI stocks right now, where some of these companies just they don't even make any sense in terms of like valuation, or you can't even you have to be looking it through, like you have to have like a rosy ass glasses, you have to have a rose made glasses to actually see these valuations and think that it's believable. AMD is one of them, right? Palantir right now is like a fucking, I obviously didn't invest in Palantir or anything, but I obviously watched from the sidelines as Palantir had its meteoric rise up. And obviously, they crashed almost 50% now. But the point is, there's a lot of hype right now in some of these AI companies. And obviously, AI is a very useful thing. Like, I talk about how much I actually use AI on a daily basis. Yeah, I talk to AI, I get AI-generated images. I use AI to generate some of the descriptions. But is it that revolutionary to the point where, it's going to completely change the entire world tomorrow? That's very questionable. And I think AI is going to be kind of similar to the internet. It is definitely useful. It is an interface that kind of adds a layer of productivity to humans in the way that the internet adds productivity, in that it's much easier to contact people, whether that be through like voice, text, email, all of that stuff. It's easier to communicate. It's easier to do logistics. It's easier to pretty much do anything that is person to person with multiple types of units or people or whatever. It is much easier to coordinate. It is much easier to it just adds an extra layer of efficiency, is all that the internet kind of just created, and devices as a whole, right? It just reduced the latency between your goal and getting the output of that goal, and that there's a lot of benefits and also downsides that come with that. But has it truly freaking fundamentally changed the way that humans operate? Not really. It's just human desires are now basically made more efficient through the intermediary. Like every technology in the entire world, base human desires have become there's lower latency to get to those base human desires with these interfaces, right? But fundamentally, the base human desires have never changed, right? Whether you go to fucking caveman periods or now, the only thing that has changed is the interface in which how we get through those, the interface in which that they use in order to get to those goals, right? Like now, like instead of having to, maybe as like a fucking caveman, you'd have to go in and you have to hunt your food and all that shit. Now you can order it through an app and then it'll come and deliver it to your door, whatever it is. Or you can go and you can kind of look at options online or whatever it is. It's just an interface, right? I feel like fundamentally, AI will just be the same trajectory, right? It's just right now, yeah, there's marginal use case because the reliability is obviously very low. If anybody who's had a conversation with like any LLM or chatbot or anything knows that you'll ask it to do something, it'll output like some like totally like just a random shit that has nothing to do with what you're asking, and then you kind of have to like guide it back into what you want. And yeah, it does save time. It does incrementally maybe make you like 10-20% more productive in certain areas, and in other areas it just is completely useless. And for many jobs, it's completely useless. And I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of the market is overhyping it, and a lot of people in the media too are also like kind of overdoing the basically like, oh, that's it, it's going to change the world, all humans are going to become redundant. It's like, okay, fundamentally every interface, every single thing that has ever happened in humanity has just been an extra interface layer to reduce the latency between a human's desire and the output, right? That's basically, because otherwise it simply doesn't work. Any economic thing has to in some way tie back to the human desire and then solving a human problem, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work with humanity, because humanity is the center core of what's going on in the world. The society is the center core of it. So anyway, basically, I can kind of see the same thing that happened to crypto, right? I am now I was, back in the day before I understood what crypto was, I was kind of like a crypto, maybe like, I thought crypto was like, kind of cool. Mainly, I was in it because I bought Ethereum and I sold it actually at the peak of the market. I bought it and only because I wanted the number to go up and I wanted to make money, right? I think most people are interested in crypto for that same thing. Nobody actually gives a shit about the underlying technology. They just want to see a number go up, right? A lot of people invest in stocks for the same reason, right? They don't really give a shit about the underlying company or the underlying, what's actually going on. They just want to see the number go up so that they can make money, right? and crypto, I feel like the big craze was not necessarily that crypto was some revolutionary technology. It was more that, oh, wow, this number went from a very tiny number to a very big number. I want the same thing to happen to me, so I'm going to invest in this so I can get a very big number. That was the whole basically the thing with crypto and all the money in crypto. But if you actually analyze, well, why is any of these cryptos valuable in the first place? Like, what is the actual real productive use case? If you actually look at it and analyze it, crypto's been around for since 2012 or some shit, 2013, which is basically 12, 13 years. And what is the actual use case? So far, it's actually almost none. Basically, it's most useful for crime and for money laundering, basically. Like, there are very niche use cases to where you could just say, oh yeah, crypto is actually a net productive to society. It's like, they're very niche use cases. And en masse, since most people use it for crime, it actually might be a net negative because, it's harder to track. Well, yes, all Bitcoin is on a blockchain, but it is harder to track in terms of like Monero and some other if you go through multiple different wallets and stuff like that, jump through hoops, it's easier to launder money that way. But what is the underlying technology, right? It's just blockchain technology, right? Which is basically just a ledger. It's an unchangeable ledger, right? That says, okay, this is what happened, and basically this is like the effect of what is transferred from where to where, right? That is what is crypto. That is what crypto is, basically, effectively. I'm not some fucking crypto expert, but to my understanding, it's basically essentially like a ledger system, right? And it's decentralized, so it's not on any central system. But the whole point of money is that it should be centralized, because you can't have a decentralized money system, because even if you think about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is pegged to the US dollar. Not pegged, but what I'm saying is you translate the value in US dollars. You translate any of the value in actual currency, right? You're not going to translate, Bitcoin doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Or Ethereum doesn't exist in a vacuum. They're all in some way, the value is tied to like a currency, whether that be the pound or the euro or the dollar, right? Fundamentally, the whole point of it is to convert into a usable currency. You can't fucking use Bitcoin to do anything, and you can't really use crypto to do anything because the transaction fees are far higher. And the trust thing is the trust, right? When you're using US dollars, the whole point is that if something goes wrong and somebody defrauds you, or somebody is using fake currency, or something is going on like that, you have the U.S. government that is backing you, that will go after this person and then get rid of them. As in punish them for what they do. Get rid of them is a little bit extreme, but you know what I'm saying. They won't be allowed. Obviously, you can't do fraud. Or the point is that you have the trust in the system, right? You know that if you deposit money in Chase Bank or something, that this bank is basically an institution that is fundamentally based on the American system. If Chase Bank goes down, then the entire U.S. system, basically the entire global system, has gone down. You know what I'm saying? So, at that point, how valuable is Bitcoin? Because at the end of the day, even if you assume that, the government goes down, but if the government goes down, your fucking Bitcoin ledger bullshit is not going to be worth shit anyway. This doesn't even fucking matter. So even the idea of being decentralized, or we're not going to be part of the system, it doesn't really actually have any real value, because at the end of the day, what do you mean not part of the system? Every single thing, every aspect of your life, whether you're using roads or using trains to get around, or even just electricity, the fucking grid, the electrical grid, that is fundamentally reliant upon the system, the centralized organizational body of the government to provide those facilities and to make sure that these things can happen and actually function. Without any of those things, you can't exist in in a realm of decentralization or something. It doesn't even make any fucking sense. And to say that, we want to have a place where government doesn't have power over our monetary supply, that doesn't even make any sense. The whole point is you trust the government because the whole point is you have a system of currency that you have to have it in some way reliant upon the government, because otherwise, who is the governing body like of Bitcoin, right? Like, who is the governing body? Who do you blame if something goes wrong? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Who do you blame if somebody frauds you? Who is the police that is going to make sure that things actually go the right way? It doesn't make any fucking sense, which is why Bitcoin is so volatile. That's like essentially the reason that Bitcoin will have like 50% or crazy good drawdowns, and it's also the reason. It's just, in my opinion, it's just an overvalued and overhyped thing. In my opinion, actually, Bitcoin, it's like, I don't actually think the long-term efficacy of Bitcoin or Ethereum is actually likely to be a long-term growth vector. I'm not saying that it'll go down. I'm not going to say like, oh yeah, as I say, it's going to go to zero. But I don't think there's anything productive in it. The number might go up, but at the end of the day, there's nothing productive. It is not based on anything productive, right? Because at least at a company, they provide goods and services, right? Or like AMD, they sell chips. At least to some degree, it is based in productive value. Yeah, AMD is 100% overhyped for what it is, and the stock is 100% speculation at this point, and is like totally, gone from reality. But at least at the end of the day, there's an underlying reality. Even if the stock goes down, it's not gonna go to zero unless obviously the underlying company goes to zero. But they provide chips, so there's always gonna be some amount of stability there because they provide something that is value. They deliver valuable goods and services. What valuable goods and services does Bitcoin deliver? Not really much. If you actually get down to it, there's nothing that is inherently Bitcoin has other than its brand that is like differentiating it from another cryptocurrency. Like, what is stopping another cryptocurrency from replacing Bitcoin other than Bitcoin's brand? Almost nothing, because you can create a ledger you can create like any ledger anywhere. It doesn't matter. You can create whatever ledger you want. You don't need to necessarily, like, if you want the underlying technology, you don't necessarily need to go only directly to Bitcoin. You can create it yourself. It's not anything like any specific thing. The only thing that is valuable about Bitcoin is that it's like the main thing that people think about when they talk about cryptocurrency. So the idea that, what's his name? That MicroStrategy, the guy, he's like, kind of like essentially he's issuing stock in order to buy leverage positions on Bitcoin, assuming the Bitcoin price will go up. And he also has like some other, like, essentially an investment fund that he markets as a high yields, like a high yield, almost like a high yield bank account or like a high yield savings, but it's really just a levered position on Bitcoin, assuming that they'll only be able to pay out dividends. It's like this essentially. Now I'm getting probably confusing to people, but MicroStrategy is a company that essentially buys Bitcoin, and the entire company is basically based on the fact that they're assuming that Bitcoin will continue to go up forever. And if Bitcoin doesn't continually go up forever, essentially the entire company is fucked. And if Bitcoin goes down, the company is super fucked because they're taking leveraged positions onto Bitcoin. And they have a separate investment account. They have a separate investment fund, basically, that pays out dividends at I think I forgot the rate, but it's a really wildly high rate, right? And it's basically marketed to like lower income people as like a savings account alternative, when really it's not a savings account alternative. It is assuming that Bitcoin is going to go up, and they're going to give you a dividend that's not guaranteed, that they don't have to pay out, which is exceptionally risky and exceptionally misleading. But enough about hating on other companies, which, to be honest, what they're doing is kind of misleading and is definitely questionable at best. But anyway, aside from that, my overall assessment, I actually sold Ethereum right when it got to like 4,800 or some shit. I got rid of it, and I am so happy about that decision. And I took that money and I put it back inside Nike, actually. It's one of the other stocks I hold. I only hold like two or three stocks, but three stocks: Adobe, Nike, and AMD. But yeah, I'm glad. I don't really believe in the long. I don't know if I really believe in the long term, long-term strategy of Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of the major cryptocurrencies. I don't really know like how useful it actually is. And if you wanted a ledger, I still don't see how like if I'm going to go banking, why would I go banking with some decentralized engine that has no fraud protection or no no ability that, like, it's just like, who do I go to if something goes wrong? Nobody. So why would I not just bank, like, and plus normal banking is pretty much free to transfer. Like, I can sell somebody money. Wired transfers are really not that expensive compared to fucking Bitcoin transfers. So yeah, I mean, unless you want to like do tax evasion or some shit, I can't really see like the point of a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as a whole. Which obviously I didn't know multiple years ago, but now that I'm looking back on it and analyzing, what is actually the real use case? I don't really see much of a use case. Maybe I'm just wrong. I haven't done enough research. But from the research that I've done, I don't see anything useful in it. Next topic is, this is kind of like a really a weird topic for me specifically to bring up, but I just noticed this. And is that, one, getting huge funding early actually could be like probably the worst thing that could happen to a company. And what I mean by is this. If you actually objectively look at like a lot of companies that even like Silicon Valley says are like really great companies like Uber or something like that, the ones that got tons of funding really early and then tried to win out competition by basically artificially low prices, the whole blitz scaling thing, right? If you actually objectively look at it, in the long run, do you actually want to be one of these companies? It all sounds great and good, like, oh, Uber is like $1 billion valuation, this, we're going IPO, we're doing this, Silicon Valley, we're taking over the world. But in reality, is that really something you want? Because if you actually objectively look at Uber, they had tons of issues. It took so long for them to become profitable. Because of their blitz scaling or quickly scaling, they essentially created a system that in their company where they hired tons of people, then they had to fire tons of people because they weren't the right fit. And it's just like, and the systems were not in place to like manage things correctly. Then they had government regulation step in, and it's just like all these problems, and they have to raise prices, and then you had competition that comes in, and it's just like I feel like the business model didn't grow organically; it grew artificially, and that caused just a lot of host of problems. Compare that to Amazon. They did get funding early, but they didn't get huge funding early. They did IPO pretty early too, but they didn't get crazy levels of funding early. Right? They grow consistently, and they're still pretty fast growth, but they grow consistently, and they expanded like in a way that organically kind of grew, right? Yes, they did, grow. Arguably, they had like the sales tax advantage or whatever, but the point of the matter is, I don't think that's the make or break. The make or break is the fact that Amazon as a company consistently focused on consumers, consistently focused on actual targets, speeding up delivery times, having consistent, buyer and seller transactions, trust, reviews, making the system seamless, one-click buying, making it the most trusted site to go to, all of this stuff that you just simply can't replicate, right? Otherwise, there'd be 1,000 Amazons, right? So the point is, in a general sense, is getting huge funding early actually a benefit to any company, right? Because I would objectively say, not objectively, but I would say in my opinion, I would personally not want to be a company that gets huge funding early. Even though it might feel good, even though you might get a high valuation, even though you personally might be able to cash out early. I'm not saying this is going to happen to me. I'm just saying in a general sense, if I look at it objectively, I'd personally rather be the company that grows slowly. You know what I'm saying? Goes from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and goes step by step. You know what I'm saying? And once you actually have a proven business model, then you can expand a little bit faster. But still, at the end of the day, do you want to be a fucking WeWork or something? Not really. It's just like, do you actually want to get huge funding early? Because at the end of the day, does it really actually make you a better business owner, does it actually expand the scope and scale of productivity to get tons of money early? Not really. No, I would objectively say no. So yeah, and I guess this kind of ties into IPOs being less. This is just something I'm reading. This has no relation to obviously me or anything right now, but this is just extracurricular reading. Just stuff that I'm reading. IPOs being at all-time lows. I actually objectively think that's a good thing because a lot of the IPOs back in the day did not turn into very successful, productive companies. I think a lot of them were basically just fucking scams. Like scams with extra layers. They're just pump and dumps. And I would argue a lot of the IPOs today are almost just or at least the SPACs, you could argue. A lot of the SPACs were essentially just pump and dumps. The thing is, objectively, if a company is going to be IPOing, obviously, yes, they do want to get the highest valuation so they can raise the most amount of money. But in a general sense, right, the main goal of IPOing for a company shouldn't necessarily just be to raise money. It should also just be to get public awareness, right, to become a more legitimate company. And in a general sense, the long-term sense, a public company has more access to talent, more access to funding, more access to loans. You can issue bonds easier. It's just, there's a lot of things that are a benefit to being a public company that you won't have when you're a private company. But anyway, point is, I don't actually think that less IPOs is a bad thing. I guess it's a really weird proxy that people say, oh, there's the fewest IPOs of all time. Yeah, but if you actually objectively look at it, out of all the IPOs, how many actual real productive companies were there long term? Not that many, obviously. So, okay. This next topic is kind of an interesting one. And it actually is a change in worldview that I had from the past. So in the past, I kind of thought that, okay, this is specifically about SpaceX, okay? In the past, I thought, okay, innovation and anything regarding expanding the scope and scale of understanding is good. But then if you actually objectively look at it, I'm not saying what SpaceX is doing is bad or anything like that, but understanding is more like a wave, in my opinion, right? From what my understanding suggests, understanding is more like a wave, right? And I feel like SpaceX is building reusable rocketry before demand exists for that to be there. It's not that I don't think the engineering is awesome. The engineering is wonderful. And I think Elon's team there is like the top notch of rocket science. I'm not going to hate on SpaceX, but I do think objectively, like if you're going to devote resources to something, right? And the goal is to understand the nature of the universe. You wouldn't do it for something that you don't necessarily have a full-on case of demand for. And in the case of SpaceX, 75% of their launches are launching their own satellites, and their own satellites have a really low. You have to replace them every 6 years, so there's one thing. And then their own satellites, Starlink is not going to be better than fiber connection or any of the broadband or whatever it is that currently exists in most dense cities. So Starlink is only really better in rural areas, and the rural market is not that big, obviously, because it's rural. So, and most of the target consumer base for rural stuff outside of the U.S. would be like third world countries. But no third world person in like fucking West Africa or some shit is going to be able to afford a Starlink dish. So most of the rural market is not. It's just not going to be a profitable enough engine to justify the billions of dollars spent on reusable rockets, right? You could argue, okay, the whole thing for SpaceX is that once reusable rocketry becomes cheaper, then it'll open up a market of people, and it'll open up a market of people that want to put stuff into space. Is that the case? I don't know. But usually, in general, it's like, do you build the steam engine before you have tons of demand in ships going back and forth? Like if you have tons of ship transport and there's like tons of ships going back and forth, then it makes sense to have an upgrade to a steam engine ship. You know what I'm saying? Because then you'll be able to increase transport by like 10 times. But if right now ships are going very sparsely, does it really make any sense to spend a long time engineering a steam engine before you even have consistent, coal for the steam, before you have like coal supply chain, before you have consistent metal supply chains, before you have consistent all these things? Is it good? And before you have consistent need for these ships, is it good to build a steam engine that you assume, okay, because the steam engine exists now, transport will because it's cheaper now, automatically people are going to want to send more stuff? Maybe, but is that actually the case, or is it more like demand comes first and then justifies the steam engine, rather than the steam engine comes first, then demand has to postpartum justify it? Because, for example, cars didn't really, there wasn't really much of a, necessarily, yes, horses were being used, but cars didn't really become a thing, even though engines were made really a long time before. Engines were made a really long time before cars and other engine uses became prevalent. And that is because, one, it was hard to make consistently. Yeah, that is true. Two, even though demand might have been there, it just didn't make sense for most use cases because there wasn't really a profitability aspect of it. You could replace it with a steam engine or a thing, but it was too expensive to justify, and it didn't really make sense, right? I don't know. For me, in my opinion, understanding is one of those things that one relies on another, right? You can't have steam engines without consistent coal. You can't have consistent coal without consistent ability to mine the coal. You can't have consistent ability to mine the coal. Everything kind of the entire thing is kind of like based on another thing. You know what I'm saying? In the same way that you can't have AI without consistent GPUs, which you can't have without TSMC, making consistent, with their consistent lithography, which is by ASML, right? Everything kind of relies on one another. You can't have one without the other. And it's kind of like a web, everything kind of grows together because the market kind of grows together. So if you're objectively trying to devote resources to something, I feel like SpaceX pursuing reusable rocketry actually may not be the most high ROI understanding objective to pursue, because there's no justified demand as of yet. And is it objectively going to increase the scope and scale of productivity by much? Not really. So compared to other things, right? There are many things that are like definitely high ROI, right? Like what does Palantir do, for example? Palantir is just taking they're not really doing anything revolutionary per se. They're just taking what already exists in many industries, which is taking a bunch of data sets and then making it into a unified dashboard and then using these data sets to give you a better idea of the actual entire picture. And they're applying that to the military or specific companies, which companies already do internally, but they're just kind of perfecting that technique. In the same way, there are many things in the world that are very inefficient, right? Whether that be in third world countries or even in first world countries that are inefficient, like logistics or transportation, or many things that are very inefficient that have easy high ROIs, that you could just take things that already exist and then apply them in practice that are not being done yet, that could give you high amounts of productivity and therefore high amounts of understanding. But you're using those resources to build reusable rocketry. Is that the best long-term ROI? I'm not sure. I think on an infinite time horizon, you'd find that going step by step instead of trying to build necessarily a reusable rocketry, like something that's kind of. I feel like to me, it's just like a really expensive. To me, I feel like it's really cool engineering. It's amazing what they're doing. I'm not gonna like hate on it, but is it actually the highest ROI for expanding, understanding the nature of the universe? I'm not sure, because again, how useful is it to understanding? How productive does it actually make? How much more productive does it make the economy justifiably, like compared to the costs, obviously, because there's a tons of costs associated with creating these reusable rockets, and tons of talent that is being used and diverted that could be used elsewhere, that is being used for this, and how much of a return on investment are you getting for that? I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of reading too much into the details. Maybe it was too confusing for that. I didn't explain it properly, but that's just kind of the way I look at it. Yeah, I probably repeated myself quite a few times there on the same points. But yeah, that's to me. I think, in my opinion, the goal is just investing into the thing that is just the next step, right? And that way the entire wave of understanding together gets to that next step. It's like it would be completely useless to try to research, for example, living forever right now, because we haven't even gotten to that level yet, to where everything actually, like, you have the entire ecosystem has to be at a higher level of understanding. It's like trying to create an LLM in 1980. It doesn't make sense. You don't have the compute. You don't have the tons of internet accessible knowledge right there. There's so many things that just wouldn't work out. It just wouldn't even make sense. You get started and you're like, okay, this thing you're just fighting an uphill battle. And even if you made it, it would be so expensive to use. It'd just be a really fancy toy, right? And the goal is not to create a really fancy toy. The goal is to create something useful and productive so that you can expand the scope and scale of understanding. So I think in a general sense, what I take away from me personally is that anything I'm going to do in my life should just be the next step. It should not necessarily try to be creating something 10 steps ahead. It is trying to create the next step and bringing and just trying to push understanding forward to the next level, but not trying to take something that doesn't exist, like that's so far out that is unbelievably unreal, and trying to bring it to reality, because then it might just become a really expensive toy that is essentially valueless. But anyway, next topic. I like to look at things objectively. And it's funny because, I think this is overall the truth, but whenever you look at anything on the media or anything that is displayed online on any content platform, it tends to be that the most extreme viewpoint on any side of the argument gets filtered the most into the algorithms, and the least it tends to be the least objective analysis of what's going on. And because of that, that's just because that's what gets views, right? The calm, methodical analysis doesn't really get any views, and a lot of that is just because how human nature is, right? That's just human nature. It's not really anything to complain about, but it's just the reality. But I like analyzing things like structurally and understanding what's the reality of what's going on. And one of the things that a lot of people tend to complain about is the idea that things cost so much, right? Basic necessities cost far too much, relative to income. But I think this is like obviously a multifaceted discussion that you could go into multiple points. One is, okay, well, fundamentally income is relative to productivity, right? And in general, the more productive you are, the harder you are to replace, and the harder you are to replace, the more amount of money the marketplace will give you for your skills. This is obviously just basic, just the way that the market works, right? This is how markets work. And you could also argue that, well, a lot of people don't have very valuable skills, right? Like what is the skill set of a minimum wage worker? It's very simple and easy to train another person to do the job. It's very replaceable, right? Anybody could be able to flip burgers or make sandwiches, which is why the market rate is so low. And to artificially try to make that rate higher wouldn't make any sense, because fundamentally the market rate is justified on how replaceable the task is, right? A CEO's job, when the lever that they pull might be changing billions of dollars of sales, right? A really good CEO might be able to innovate and make a product that and deliver a product to the market that, creates billions more for a big company. Whereas, the lever that, you're like a minimum wage worker, when he like makes a burger, he can make a bad burger or make a really good burger. At the end of the day, if he makes really good burgers, maybe he'll get a couple extra customers at his one location during his shift. So how much of an impact on revenue does that make? Probably not much, right? By comparison. So obviously you could factor that in, and that's, the main, on the income side, it comes down to like really the market. And obviously you can make arguments that, okay, well, in certain cases, if the market of innovation, like in countries that are like Russia or something, or like in the Soviet Union, no matter how productive you are, because of the way that the companies are structured, it doesn't matter. Even if you're a very productive person, because of the way that it's structured, you will not be able to, you kind of use your skills and market them and get a better job. And I would say that, yeah, that's fundamentally like a structural issue. If fundamental, obviously that doesn't really occur often, to where the point where, you gain skills and you objectively produce a lot of value, but because of the structure of the system, you're not able to actually effectively create value because of the structure of the system. And there are systems where that occurs, right? Especially in third world countries or times of war, where you could be a very productive person, but because you're forced to do something else, you're not able to actually use that productivity effectively. And that is an argument to be made, but that is such a niche argument that doesn't really apply to any modern first world country or any country that's not in a war or something like that. So it's not really a fair argument to make that. But anyway, let's talk about like actual costs of things. The thing is, with the argument of costs of things, people talk about this, especially when it comes down to housing and healthcare. But both of those products have changed a lot over time, right? And the healthcare one is like, okay, people compare to like really old healthcare rates, like, okay, the average income to healthcare spend ratio, in the 1980s was far less than today. Okay, well, that's also not a fair argument, because what is the level of care in the last 40 years? Like your average survivability, like, if you're going to the doctor's office for like, injury or a disease, your ability to actually solve that disease in 1980 is far less than today, because of the high technology that costs a lot of money in order to do that. So obviously, well, you wouldn't be able to survive in 1980, but you would be able to survive today for many diseases, right? Like, like even diseases like AIDS, or like even diseases like cancer is much more treatable than back then. There's many diseases, even diabetes or anything, like all these diseases are much more treatable today, or at least you have your lifespan will be not as effective today as in the past. So it's not really a fair comparison, because it's a completely different service at this point, right? The service itself has changed, because it's much more valuable today than it is back in the day, right? Because you're able to cure a lot more diseases today. So I guess fundamentally, like, how do you give a cost to that? Like, what is the cost, a vector of cost analysis on, like, okay, like, the bundle of services that you get back in the day compared to the bundle of services that you get today? It would be you'd have to like actually quantify that, and then you'd have to do like an actual adjustment based on inflation. And then I think you'd find that actually today you get a better value for a dollar spent compared to before. But the money that you spend is probably higher relative to your income, because the services are just more today. Because back in the day you might have just died, but today you survived, but it's a really expensive bill. You know what I'm saying? But how do you factor that in, right? So when you say healthcare's costs are really high, okay, well, would you like to go back to the 1980s? Okay, like, how do you really solve that problem effectively? Because it's not as if, there's no universal solution to the problem. Even if you go to countries with free healthcare, it's not really like there's a universal solution, like, because they tend to get the worst, like, they tend to not get as good care, because there's just not as much, there's not as much incentive to care for those people, and the people with chronic illnesses have to end up waiting a long time. So there's downsides to every system. Fundamentally, it's not like there's like a universally perfect system. And I think a lot of people, especially in the media, try to simplify these problems as like, oh, all you have to do is just one thing and then it'll solve all the problems. Well, the problems are not that simple. One is like, okay, there's manufacturers of these cures. They have to be incentivized to continue making better, better solutions to the problems, right? So you don't want to remove that incentive, obviously. Then there's actual doctors and people administering care. And then there's the insurance companies who try to insure, right? You insure you so that you don't have to, because otherwise you'd be paying out of pocket for all of these cares. So, and then there's a government who tries to, come in and then they have like their own like Medicaid or whatever, private, like their own public, insurance type situation. And then, there's like nonprofit hospitals and then for-profit hospitals, and the vast majority in the US are actually nonprofit. So, there's like a lot of shit that's going on, and it's not like, okay, there's not like necessarily one solution to the problem, right? There's it's like a multifaceted, problem, and each one kind of has like a different, there's like each one has hundreds of variables. Like just within the manufacturer, there's hundreds of variables. There's regulation. There's first. Have you even calculated the fact that regulatory oversight has gone up like probably like fucking 15 or 100, like probably like 50 or 100 times compared to 1980 if you want to put a drug to market, and nobody's asking you to get rid of those regulations because those regulations actually help people. So it's much more expensive for a company to put the drug to market. So obviously they have to charge more in order just to make back the cost of the drug. And then there's also there's just so much more. There's so much that the cost to start like a drug development startup today is probably like a gajillion times, even inflation adjusted, compared to what it was 40 or 50 years ago, because the technology, like the machines required, right, for testing, for R&D, for development, for consistency of the drug, for quality control after you actually create the drug, there's like 1,000 steps, right? So every single facet has gone up in price and also in service, right? Because you get a better product at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, when you judge the end prices, it's really high relative to my income. Okay, but you have to, do you want it to go back to where you just die instead? Or like, I don't know, it's a really hard comparison. And then as a real estate agent, I saw this with housing. People complain about the housing prices being too high. Okay, well, fundamentally, there's also like a dichotomy here where like people want house prices to rise because they invested in real estate as an investment vehicle, as an asset vehicle. And then you also simultaneously think it's too expensive to live. So that's also fundamentally like those things are kind of at odds with each other. You can't on one side have an investment and then one side say you want housing prices to go down. It doesn't really make much sense, and so much of the investment world is tied to housing prices. But okay, let's just delete that fact for a second. Also, on top of that, a lot of housing, the restricted supply idea is the idea that single family housing is abundant and you can build tons of it in high density areas, which doesn't make sense. For example, in a city like Los Angeles, a lot of the city is sitting in low density, single family housing. But fundamentally, you're geographically constrained. You cannot make more single family housing throughout the city because then the driving time and traffic and all of those things are just too much, right? It just doesn't. In fact, in a city, you want a city to look like Tokyo, to where most of the buildings are like multifamily, very dense, stuff like that. But almost no American city is like that. And expecting that you're going to build a low density piece of housing in a high density city, and expect that housing costs are going to be magically low. It doesn't make any sense, And then you're asking like, oh yeah, in 1950 the housing costs were much cheaper relative to income. Okay, but that's not even a fair comparison because the population was far less. At that time, Los Angeles wasn't even a high density city, as high dense as it is today. And it's just the population, the income levels, the desirability for living in that area. These aren't even like fair comparisons, honestly. It's not even like a relative comparison at all in any meaningful way. It's just like you're talking about a blip of time where, yeah, in American cities, the American earner was probably earning a little bit of money and they were able to live nearby because there just wasn't that big of a population, and they were able to live in a low density piece of housing, which is actually fundamentally not really economically that sustainable because, obviously low density housing gets less property taxes than high density areas. So there's just a lot of like things that you're adding on top of each other that just don't really make much sense, And then if you're talking about total housing as a whole, I mean, I would argue from my experience as a real estate agent, most people don't actually want condos. There are tons of condos available, but not very many buyers for condos. And there are tons of, from what I saw, available rental units, but not that many people actually. There are tons of available rental units, but baby, I don't know. I just saw that if there was truly like a total housing supply shortage, like a living space shortage, then you'd assume that condos, even small rental units, and that nothing in the entire city would be available. Like the second anything at all comes on the market, it gets immediately bidded out and then, taken. But that's not really what I saw. What I saw is even within single family housing, there were certain types of single family housing that got tons of, interest, and then other types that didn't. Most condos, no matter what type of price was or what it was, didn't really get that much interest. Many rental types, even rental types that you'd assume that, the average person would be interested in didn't get that much. So I mean, I think it's a multifaceted problem. I think that, at the end of the day, it's like when you create a city that is so, I think obviously the way that cities are created based on car infrastructure also changes things, because you can't really, it makes it harder to make a high density city when you're kind of reliant upon cars. You're almost forced to make it low density and sprawling, like having like suburbs. And then also that issue translates to, now you're gonna have more traffic, and you're gonna have to build highways. Highways are expensive, so you can't spend that money on public transit. We have to build highways instead, and it's just like a multifaceted problem, right? So I don't think there's any one lever to solve any of these problems, and it's not as if you could build more single-family housing, because even if, let's just say, you could cheaply build single-family housing, you just they're in a high-density city, there would be no point. Like, you'd have to go outside of the city to build single-family housing that's low density, and then at the end of the day, you just keep building. Like, you're just gonna have like a fucking desert worth of single-family houses. Then you're just gonna have insane levels of traffic, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, for a builder, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't like logically add up on any, like, from a property tax perspective, because then you have to have electrical lines for all of that entire city, sewage lines for that entire city, roadways for that entire city that needs to be maintained, potholes need to be fixed, roads need to be replaced every so often. It just like the entire thing of like, oh, we want, like, I think the whole like, oh, housing is too expensive. Well, that's fundamentally a function of like, okay, one, the type of housing that you're asking is that you want low density in a high density area, which fundamentally is always going to be constrained, right? That's only going to be for the richest people, because obviously you physically can't make that many houses in a high density area. It's just not physically possible. And then okay, well, total housing needs to be increased. Okay, well, total housing needing to be increased, you could argue that that is the truth, but when you create tons of low density housing, nobody wants to create high density housing anymore in that area, because their housing is almost like an investment to them. If you worked hard and you bought $1 million property in West Hollywood or something, you don't want across the street in your neighborhood to just be like an apartment building, somebody bulldoze the 4 houses in front of you in your apartment, and then apartment building go up, because that would tank the value of your property, right? And like, if you're living in Beverly Grove, you don't want your neighbors to be like replaced by multifamily housing. It's going to tank the value of your property. So, because your property for you spent $1 million, you have tons of equity, you don't want that to go away, and you want to be underwater on your loan potentially. So there's tons of this is like one of those problems where it's like there's so many facets of this issue that it's not really easily solvable in any meaningful way. So even discussing it is like, okay, people say online, oh yeah, this, that, oh yeah, we need to build more housing, do this. Well, are you really even like factoring all the problems? Okay, what is the solution to all of these problems? Okay, what is the solution to the homeowner that currently is living there? What about the older people that are living there? What about the roadways and all of this? And okay, you're going to build public infrastructure. That's great, congratulations. But okay, what about the fact that most of the city is currently built and currently used with highways and stuff like that? How is this transition gonna work? Are you just gonna like you see what I'm saying? It's just like. And then for Beverly Hills, like, most of the whole appeal of the city is the fact that it's like low density in the flats and all of that, and that's the whole pristine nature of Beverly Hills. Is the whole like thing is like, it's like that's the whole value of Beverly Hills. So it's like, I don't know, it's like these are multifaceted problems. I think pretty much every problem in life is this way. I think that the entire media ecosystem is just trying to sum up problems in a simple and easy to read, in a simple like 1 or 2 word sentence. Oh, like this isn't, to get like outrage or clicks or whatever. And then they don't really offer any real solutions to the problem. And I haven't seen that from any influencer really that offers real systematic, like, okay, hey, let's understand the system. Let us go over the actual levers that actually solve the system, and let us see how we can implement this out over decades. Nobody ever does that. No politician ever does that. And in my opinion, I actually, if I go back in time, I would not vote. Why? I would not vote for any candidate. I would not vote for anybody, because I don't believe in the system of voting at all. I don't believe in the system at all. And like, going back and like knowing what I know now, like I don't plan to vote on any election in the future, because at the time I was younger and I just didn't fully understand how political systems work. But in my opinion, you don't solve systematic issues by voting a new person into office, because fundamentally it doesn't matter who you vote into office. Systematic issues are more caused by incentive structures and things like that, rather than arguably, well, the whole voting thing is like, arguably, okay, how much does your one vote even matter relative to the state that you're in, right? If you're in like a blue state or a red state, it doesn't even fucking matter who you vote for, because obviously that state is going to be the party that it swings for. And then your vote only really matters if you're in the swing states. But then again, okay, even if let's just say you voted for the person and that person won, congratulations. Okay, at the end of the day, an elected official, right? Their 99% of their job is just a marketing job, right? Their goal is just to, like, whatever the piece of paper says, they're just gonna sign it, show it to the camera, and then go say cheese. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, you think like Trump or like Biden or anybody is actually sitting down, reading the policies, understanding the long-term effects of this policy, reading the data, and understanding all of the details and how the system is going to change and what incentives are going to change and how this is going to actually relate. No, they're definitely not doing that. Their goal is just to sign whatever this piece of paper says. It has a headline, fucking lower taxes or this or whatever it is, and then they're going to show that to the camera, cheese, and then they're gonna claim any benefits that happened during that year is going to be claimed by this party, right? They're going to say, oh yeah, that my party did that, and any downsides they're going to blame that on somebody else. So that's the goal of any political person. That's the goal, because at the end of the day, fundamentally, the people who are actually making decisions and understanding the data are people who are not elected officials. They are people who are sitting down, that are actually behind the scenes, understanding the data. And these people have nothing to do with the political parties. They're just like people in the Fed, for example. Like, these people are not elected. They're just like people who are hired based on their skill set and based on what they actually know and understand. And then they sit down and actually look at the data. Okay, how can we alter this to do this, and they make recommendations, and then those recommendations get signed. They put into paper, and then those recommendations are shown to the political officials. They sign it, they show it, pretend as if they did it, and then they move on with their life. I feel like it doesn't matter. I feel like if you actually objectively look at it, like, okay, if this person was in power versus this person, what decisions would have actually changed? And long term, how much of an impact would that actually have on an individual's life? Pretty much nothing. I don't think you'd actually see very much of a change. People will probably disagree with that, but I don't think between one candidate or another candidate, long-term decisions would actually be that much different from each other. Probably not, honestly. And that's why I don't find that voting is even meaningful in any meaningful sense in any time period. It has nothing to do with this time period or that time period. I think structurally, if you want change to happen, then you should be focused on solving problems consistently. Like, if you genuinely think that like housing is an issue, then you should be sitting down, like, analyzing the constraints of what's causing the housing supply to be whatever it is, constrained, and then you should analyze one of those problems and then try to solve one of those problems as best as you can with a productive and profitable solution. That is the only way that you can actually solve problems at scale anyway. So politics, regulation is just like it matters to the extent that you have a democracy, to the extent that to keep the system running, like, as in a general sense. But yeah, as far as voting goes, I don't even think it's meaningful in any meaningful way, because your return on investment in time is always situated so that your individual actions are always far more meaningful to your own life than anything that the government is ever going to do, right? I think Dave Ramsey always said the decisions you make in your house are always going to outweigh the decisions that are made in the White House, right? So yeah, that's my honest opinion on that. But I guess that was a huge tangent onto just like random shit. But yeah, I just like to really understand things and analyze them properly. Another one is like inequality. But the thing is, like, what does inequality even fucking mean? Like, it's like, okay, first you have to define what that even means, and then define why it's a problem, and then define, because like the only problem would be mobility, right? Not inequality necessarily, because inequality is natural, like in anything ever, right? Whether that be like sports, whether that be like math, or whether that be like fucking understanding, or whether it be anything. There's obviously going to be somebody who's better than somebody else. This is just like life, bro. This is just like reality, right? There's always going to be one planet that's bigger than another planet, right? This is just like reality, right? So, like, okay, inequality will exist no matter how you skin the cat, obviously. So really the question is mobility existing, right? Can somebody who is necessarily, like, let's just say you were born into an impoverished place, do you have mobility? And I would argue, in pretty much 99% of cases in the first world, mobility is always there. You can always improve the mobility aspect by making education, like financial education, more mainstream to people that are, in underserved areas. You can change the systems in underserved areas, like gang violence and stuff like that, that takes people out of the race as a whole, which is definitely existing. I'm not going to sit here and argue that, oh yeah, everybody everywhere has a perfect chance of, accomplishing something. That's obviously not true, because, like, if you go to like Chicago or something, a lot of the kids that are born in underserved areas end up falling into gang violence, end up falling into prison before they even have a chance, right? And that is objectively something that can be fixed. But I would argue most of the attention is not, okay, here are the 5 major underserved regions of the U.S. The U.S. system. Here's, out of those 5, here's the one main thing that I think we should be trying to target for this year. Here are 6 ways we can fix that. Here are the 6 problems. Here are like the constraints of, this underserved population in this specific area. Here are the 8 things that we think, based on real data, that'll actually go in to solve this problem. And all we need is XYZ number of funding or whatever it is, and then we can go in and we can actually test that. And then 2 years later, we can kind of just see what were the results of that to test. Did mobility improve? Did people get better jobs? Did people have less joining of gangs? Did people have less of a turnover rate towards crime or towards prison or whatever the situation or case may be? But nobody approaches problems like that. They just say, "Oh, inequality is crazy. Let's just, the billionaires are bad, or whatever it is, or oh, poor people are this or that." It's like, it doesn't actually solve any of the problems that you described that you wanted to solve. It's just like you're just like yelling and screaming. It doesn't really like solve any problems, right? So I don't know. It's like if you already there is something to be said about, like, okay, you don't want to have monopoly, you don't want to have regulatory capture. Right? You don't want to have a company that is not innovating anymore, right? Like a lot of companies in Russia that, because of their ties to the government, they're gonna, no matter if a small company starts growing, they'll just destroy the company. They're not even, you know what I'm saying? That's like regulatory capture, or like the regulatory capture in the sense that they create regulations so high that the barrier to entry to actually do any of those regulations and to actually meet the requirements to be a legal company is so high that only the incumbents will survive. So the incumbents can raise prices or do whatever they want or deliver bad quality service and still be fine, right? You definitely don't want that happening, and nobody's arguing for that. But I would say that that's not really the case, right? I would say that, like Google is operating in a hyper competitive space, right? Amazon is operating in a hyper competitive space. There are tons of competitors for every single one of the things that they do, and their margins are not like monopoly type margins, right? None of the companies have monopoly type margins. Facebook doesn't have monopoly type margins. I mean, yeah, it is a good company. They're very profitable, but if they stop delivering good products, if people stop liking Instagram, then that's it. The Facebook is not really going to have that big of an engine anymore. So really, the thing is like people are like on the media, they'll say like, oh yeah, this person is bad, or the CEO is bad, or this is that. The reality is, at the end of the day, right? What is the point of an economy? The point of an economy is to, if you think about it, the goal of an economy is to give resources to the people that allocate it best towards solving humanity's problems, right? And you can argue about different ways to get there, right? China has their own way of getting there, but there are so many little factors that China does, right, that make their government the way they are, right? They have to figure out everything, right? Because even if this is a U.S. system, there are so many different things, from like, to make the money system work or to make the economy work correctly. There are so many different levers, right? Every single person has a proper job in there, right? There's no piece that is, you can just, oh yeah, here's a one simple solution. No, every single thing has in the U.S. system, it's a lot of decentralized factors. You have the Fed who changes interest rates, the regional banks who do this. There's many different like individual factors, and it all kind of works together over time, right? That it all kind of works. China has their own little system, but at the end of the day, if you're going to propose a system, you have to focus on the details. Okay, you're going to propose a system. Okay, so what are the actual levers that you're going to pull? Okay, how can you ensure that the money supply actually stays constant? A good example is this. Okay. People will argue that, oh, lower taxes is better because if a company has lower taxes, they're giving less money to the government, right? And because of that, they're going to be able to hire an extra person, right? They're going to be able to do this or do that. A lot of people will claim this, but if you actually objectively look at it, there is a balance to be made here, because if you give, what actually happens when you give businesses too much money, like as in like if many businesses have like taxes not being taken out and they have a lot of money, they end up putting that money into, they do hire people to an extent. There's an extent of, you hire an extra person, you increase your capacity, you increase your stuff. But after that, then the money goes towards speculative things. Like, okay, like for example, in Japan, when there's a lot, in the 90s or whatever, they had like a ton of excess money in the supply. So it ended up being like real estate values would skyrocket far in excess of what it actually was worth, right? Far in excess of the real value. So to the point, I think, where the emperor's palace or something, whatever the grounds were in Tokyo, was like worth more than all of Manhattan or something. Like that little area in Tokyo was worth more than the city of Manhattan. So like, as in like, there is a limit to where to where the return on investment of, and this is the same thing for the government. If the government has too much money, then they're also going to spend it on speculation and things that are not as high productivity ROI. It's a fine balance that has to be maintained, right? And nobody gives a good solution to this. They like, oh, tax people more. Oh, don't tax people more. It's just like, okay, how can you what is the actual system that you make sure that there's not too much money in the government supply, there's not too much money in the individual private supply, so that speculation doesn't occur. Nobody ever talks about the details, but the details are what actually make an economy, right? So anyway, it's not as if I'm like super knowledgeable on this. I'm fucking like 21-year-old, and I didn't even finish high school fully. I graduated early with a diploma. So what do I know? But all I'm saying is that nobody is really talking about any of the details in any meaningful way. They all just like say like, oh, random shit on the internet, like, oh yeah, we should do this, or we should do that, or we should create this law that taxes X people with their thing, or we should create this law that stops taxes. It's like, okay, wait, hold on. It's like, what? It doesn't even make any sense. It's just incoherent. So the best thing is just to tune out. You know, it's like, okay, I'm not even gonna listen to any of it. That's most of politics anyway. It's just nonsense. It's just people talking over each other, not actually even understanding, not actually breaking down anything realistically or coherently. All right, next topic. I did say this is going to be a long one, so. But anyway, okay. So the next one that I found was interesting is how much of life has become, in the modern day, more about like proxies, right? It's like a proxy for this, a proxy for that, and then you're gonna like, it's like a chain of proxies. Here's what I mean. So if you don't know what a proxy is like, basically, a proxy is this, right? So let's just say I want food, right? Well, in order to get food, I need money, right? So money is a proxy of food. You see what I'm saying? And then in order to get money, I need to go work a job, right? So and in order to go have that, or you have to provide service or provide something of value. So providing value is a proxy of money, right? And then in order to provide value or service, you need to actually have skills. So skills is a value. Skills is a proxy of providing value. See what I'm saying? Each one of those is like a proxy chain. See what I'm saying? And a lot of modern life is kind of proxies, because if I look at it like, okay, if I was just like looking at it in myself, right? It's like, okay, my goal is to understand, right? Understand the nature of the universe, right? And that requires me to have resources, right? As like a proxy, it requires me to have money, right? Money and resources and connections and skills, right? I would say all of those things. Well, we can just bucket that into resources. Those are all a form of resources, right? Money is a form of resource. Skill is a form of resources. Connections is also a form of resource. In order to gain those resources, you need to have probably a consistent scaled business. Okay, so it's another proxy right there. In order to have a consistent scaled business, you need to be providing consistent value, and also you need to have lots of leads in order to get there, right? You need to have leads, so that's another proxy. And then in order to get leads, I need to make ads and make content. So it's funny how many proxies are there. I'm making content in order to get something, and that something is in order to get another thing and another thing, and it's funny, right? And then that other thing is to get my end goal. And I also noticed, right, I found myself optimizing for quantity of content at one point. And then I questioned, wait, why am I doing this again? Right, that was like I'm doing content in order to get leads at some point. And I was questioning that proxy in the middle. I was like, why am I making so much content again? Why am I doing this twice a day? Like two every single day for 6 months? But I can kind of see now where big companies end up having an issue where essentially one of the chains of proxies, this is like, it's called Goodhart's law or whatever. I was doing some research on this, but it is where the actual I think quote or whatever is, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. So that meaning, like, the goal, you set a company, you set it like for this team, their goal is to make as much content as possible, right? And because if they make more content, then you get more leads, right? At some point that connection was there, and obviously the leads turn into sales. Okay, but down the line, the content stops producing more leads, but they're still optimizing for more and more content. But that more and more content stops producing good leads. There's a depreciation curve right there. So they're spending tons more money to get more and more content. So instead of just 100 pieces a week, they're maybe now making 200 pieces or 300 pieces a week. But you're not seeing the relevant number of leads. But on their side, they feel like they're doing an amazing job. They're constantly hitting that target. And because of that, they should be getting a raise and all that stuff. And this is amazing. They hit the expectations out of the park. Last quarter, they did 200 pieces a week. Now they're doing 300 pieces a week. Next quarter, they're on track to doing 400 pieces a week. But the connection over years, let's just say, kind of falters, right? over years, the connection kind of falls. So people are optimizing for this, but the reality is this. So I could see how that becomes a big problem, especially in companies. That people are optimizing, the whole team is optimizing, or the whole company is optimizing for X, Y, Z. Or that doesn't even maybe the person who created that optimization framework, oh, we should optimize for this, isn't even at the company anymore. And the reason that they made that optimization framework was to get leads or was to do this. But that doesn't exist anymore because maybe they don't want those types of leads anymore. Maybe they changed the type of business that they're offering or whatever it is, and then people are still optimizing for the wrong target, basically. So, but in a small business like me, it's very simple because obviously if I make a piece of content or make ads that aren't working, I just change that because I obviously see it's not working. It's not making my bottom line more. But when you get a bigger and bigger company, actions relative to revenue are really like distorted, right? It's a chain. It's a bigger chain of proxies to get to the revenue. That might have been confusing, but I just thought that was an interesting thing. This is a chain of proxies because, like, obviously as a caveman, there's not that many proxies, right? You go out, you get food, right? You go out and you hunt for food, and that's it. You get your food. There's not that many proxies. I mean, you could argue that love itself is just one giant proxy because it is technically one. It is one giant proxy. What is like love or pair bonding? Love or pair bonding is just a proxy for children, right? In the modern day, it doesn't necessarily result in children, but the entire thing is just one giant proxy for children, right? You get into the human mind wants to get into this type of activity because it is likely to produce children, or at least it was for the vast majority of history, right? In the modern day, obviously, it's not necessarily the case because of contraception, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, a lot of life is just proxies. But anyway, get on to the next topic of commodification. So, how is what I was thinking is, okay, how does a company avoid becoming a commodity? Well, what I noticed is that if you actually double down on what does commodity even mean? Commodity essentially means that the cost of switching between your product and another product is very low. So essentially the entire question becomes just price, right? How much do you cost? Compare that to another competitor. How much do they cost? Whoever's lower, I'm going to go with them, right? That is essentially what a commodity market is. But many companies avoid this by just by branding and quality, right? You want to, the reason Toyota can charge essentially a brand premium is because of the quality of the service, the quality of the product that they deliver. A Toyota will last much longer than any other car. A Toyota is much safer than any other car. A Toyota is much more simple than any other car. Blah 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 blah. All of those things, which is why they have a premium for their brand, right? And that's how you uncommodify yourself. So basically, for me, that means if I want to make sure that I don't just become a commodity, one is obviously you can change the way you offer your service, right? You don't offer the service the same way as everyone else, then obviously you can't be compared to anyone else. But the other way is just to become so high quality and so hard to change. Like nobody wants to leave your company because it's so good, and they're willing to pay a premium for that, so that you aren't really comparable to anybody else, right? If you provide such a good service that nobody wants to risk leaving for another company that does something similar, then you're obviously going to be able to charge a premium for that. But yeah, this is something that I obviously always feel. I think you're always going to feel this as an individual doing something, but it always feels slow. It always feels like I am essentially failing compared to what I want to do, right? How fast I want to move. But this is just, I guess it's a natural feeling when you're doing anything. You feel like progress is slow. But if I objectively look at it, at the end of the day, what does it really matter about the progress that I make? Or does it matter about how consistent I am in doing the things that I think will get me to understanding? My thing is, at the end of the day, results and like the end, the amount of money or whatever it is, and even how close I get to my goal is secondary to the fact that did I actually every single day consistently put in my best effort, right? And consistently en masse. Obviously, not every day you're going to be able to fucking work to the bone and do every single thing, like 100%. But en masse, let's just say in a given month or a given year or whatever, that I actually put my best foot forward every single day, get things done consistently, stay on task or whatever, and then actually consistently do the things that I think would move me forward without getting distracted. If I did that consistently enough, that is more than enough for me to be satisfied. I am more satisfied with a day that I close 0 deals, but I actually woke up on time, got my workout in, stuck to my macros, consistently did all the things that I wanted to do for that day, went to bed on time and all of that. If I do that consistently, that to me is a more satisfying day than if I woke up, didn't do any of those things, but still closed a deal. I got a client to sign up and say yes and give me money. So to me, that's all secondary. You know, to me, did I stay consistent with the things that I can control in my controllables? That's what matters the most. And to me, I keep saying to me, but in my perspective, even if I go through my entire life and I never accomplish even half of what I want to, or even whatever, if I consistently put my best foot forward as much as possible and consistently optimize for doing the things that I know I should be doing, and I'm consistently doing that day in and day out, to me that was a life well lived, right? To me that's a 100%. I would be much happier if that's the case than me, being successful on paper or having money or whatever it is, or being closer to my objectives, so to say. But actually, I wouldn't be closer to my objective because, again, if I'm not taking my best foot forward every day, if I'm slacking, or if I'm not consistently doing the things that I think are meaningful, or I'm not working as hard as I could be working, or whatever it is, that's what I feel like would be a worse life, even if on paper you have more money or whatever it is. And also, I think the perspective is also a little bit skewed, right? Because it's like you live in the 21st century, and compared to just like 100 years ago, right? Like, I'm not being drafted into some war. I'm not like, I really shouldn't really be saying like, oh, things are feeling slow. Okay, yes, things are feeling slow. You haven't gotten multiple clients that fast. So what? I mean, you're not being drafted into a war. You're not going through a famine. You're not sitting down through like a Great Depression or some crazy shit. You're not 500 years ago some tribe is going to come in and kill all you people the next day. Some crazy shit. So I think perspective is important. I think things are much, much better than they were like 50 to 100 years ago. And I think in general, the expectations of people have completely shifted in the last 100 years for sure. People were much different 100 years ago than they are today. And the standards of living today are much different than 100 or 150 years ago for sure. One thing I noticed, this is kind of a really odd one, but in any state, in any place in the U.S., getting violent is almost never the right answer to any given problem, especially when you're a young guy and somebody's like like doing something who's also a young guy. It makes it like you want to fight or something like that. But luckily, I've been able to restrain myself. But in a general sense, if you actually analyze it, let's just say you end up getting into a fight. That person gets injured, whatever it is. If they file a complaint against you, you guys could both get something on your record, like a misdemeanor or something like that. You punch this guy, let's just say. This guy falls and hits his head. He has like a permanent disability. That could be a felony. This guy hits his head and dies. Oh my God! Now you're in like manslaughter or like murder territory. So at this point, if you actually look at it, like, what is the return on investment? Like, I feel like a lot of young guys get into this problem where they end up making like a mistake, like in like a. Luckily, obviously, I have no friends or anything like that, so I'm not going to be going to like any places where I'll be like with like a bar or something like that where you get into a fight. But a lot of people make this decision when like a bad decision in a split second where they get into a fight, but then they get jail time or whatever it is, and then that obviously hurts their long-term abilities to do things. But in a general sense, I feel like it is really easy to make a simple mistake like that, and then it costing you. And obviously, it wouldn't cost you your life, obviously, in the sense that like you're still going to be fine. Even if you get something on your record, it's not going to be the end of the world. But the point is, it costs you time, effort, and things that are just unnecessary, right? I think in a long-term perspective, de-escalation is always the right thing. I just say this because I personally have had, some things that happened that kind of illuminated this to me. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? De-escalation is always the best solution to any problem. Like, why would I get into a fight over something so stupid and trivial? Like, over nothing, right? It's just like, why? It's just like, Like, the long-term perspective is just not there, right? The long-term perspective is not there. It's always best just to let it go, move forward, and onward. But yeah, okay, last thing is, so what I noticed is actually the most productive for me personally. So I've tested so many different ways of like, okay, I tested like waking up and then just like, doing my work like straight for multiple hours, and then, and then not doing work. I tested like multiple different ways to see what actually gets me the most product. Not like tested, but I just like, over time, just like try different things, because I find myself getting distracted a lot, right? That I just naturally like get distracted with like other things during like working, especially if I work for a really long time. And then like in the middle, I'll get distracted with something. I'll click on like some shit, and I'll be like, I'll be like watching like some random video about like fucking interest rates or some crazy. I don't know, like it's just like random shit. I always find myself doing that, and I'm like, oh wait, shit, like 20 minutes in, you're like, oh wait, shit, what am I doing? I need to be doing this. What I found the perfect solution to this actually so far, what I've seen is the best thing is setting an achievable target, right, for work accomplished, then taking like a 5 to 10 minute break to do whatever, like like you can watch that interest rate video or talk to ChatGPT about whatever it is. What I found is working for like 45 minutes, like an hour, with like a 15 minute break, or like 5 to 10 minute break or whatever it is, actually makes me more focused for that hour, so I get more done. And that 5 to 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, it's fine. Like at the end of the 5 to 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, it's fine. I can get back to work. I'll get back to this later. That has been more productive for me than any other thing that I've tried in the past. Because in the past, like I'd be like, okay, what distractions? Why would I ever get distracted? Let me just focus on my work. And I'd try to go for like multiple hours straight, and then I find that I just get more distracted and less productive over that course of time because I'm like forcing myself to be there, and I'm like working on the shit. But anyway, that's what I noticed. Sleep is a big one too. For whatever reason, like I don't know why, but if I don't get multiple like 8 hours to 9 hours of sleep, I'm like totally screwed. Like as in like not like screwed, but like I like will get super tired during the day. I like fall asleep. This is like how I got into like one of my crash thing, like when I crashed like almost a year ago. It was like a crash, but like I fell asleep at the wheel and I hit somebody, not like a person, but like another car. But like that's because like I underestimated. I was like, bro, it's fine. Sleep, you're fine, bro. You're young. It's gonna be fine. You don't need to sleep that much. It's not that big of a deal. And then then you fall asleep at the wheel. So what I found is like, okay, it's not about intensity, it's about consistency. I think that comes down to everything in life. In the long term, does getting that extra like 2 hours or 1 hour of work compared to sleeping actually serve you? In the long term, yeah, maybe today it works. Yeah, maybe tomorrow it's fine. For the next week it's fine. But in the long term, over like a 50, 60 year time horizon, consistent work, even if it's less output slightly per day, over multiple times, over like years, is more important than having 6 months where you work really well, and then because you're so tired, you actually end up having like you're causing yourself like physical problems or whatever it is, or you get into a crash because you're so tired or whatever it is. It's just like, is that worth what is the long-term ROI, right? The long-term return on investment, just like on an infinite time horizon, not infinite, but obviously like on a really long, decades-long time horizon. What matters most is consistency over intensity. It's better to only work 6 hours a day, but you do that for 60 years, rather than working 8 hours a day before, or not 8 hours, but like 15 hours a day, but only for like, you can only do it for 2 years and then you're burnt out or whatever it is, and you physically can't get back to work anymore. You see what I'm saying? It's just like, it's useless. It's like, okay, what matters is consistency every single day, something you can manage. Even on Saturday, Sunday, I feel like I could still work a good amount of hours, but it's consistent. It just matters more over the long term, rather than like, oh yeah, I'm gonna squeeze out an extra couple hours today. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. But yeah. Anyway, that's the entire video. We went over everything from since the last video, from like posting to ads to the trials. My goal for the next couple weeks, obviously, to get more trials from those ads. I mean, I'm thinking about doing DMs again, and the reason is because I feel like obviously both the clients I currently have, one that's canceling, I guess, but both the clients that actually signed up and paid were from DMs. I feel like I can DM gyms instead of med spas, and maybe that might work. I'm still considering it. I'm not sure yet. Obviously the ads is the main thing, but yeah, I've been getting leads from the ads. I've got a couple leads from the ads, so I mean, hopefully the ads does work kind of more. I've been getting consistent leads. It's just converting that into a trial is happening. It's just happening slowly, because again, with a generic ad, most of the ads in the last, I only started doing specific ads now, but most of the ads in the past like 2 months have been generic. So there have been all kinds of different businesses reaching out, and it just doesn't fit for so many types of businesses. So that's why I created the specific spa and gym specific one, because hopefully those ads actually convert actually give me the leads that actually convert into trials better. But yeah, we'll see. I guess it's kind of like a wait and see type situation. If I have excess time, I think that's the first thing I'm going to do is just DM, honestly. And I looked into doing like an automatic DM, and it's honestly just too many steps for me to actually code that with ChatGPT. And it's just too many steps. It's like I have to look it up, find the link, click on the profile, click follow, click a message, copy paste the message, click enter. I think it's just too many steps. I think I still have to do it manually. I don't think I can actually create an automatic tool to do that, like I did for the secondary DMs. So yeah, it's just something to work through. But yeah, we kind of went over all of those things. We went over, how I think kind of politics is irrelevant, how, just all kinds of stuff. How things aren't really as slow as they may feel. How I guess I'm forgetting a lot of the topics at this point. But yeah, we went over a bunch of different topics, and I think that's the entire video. Yeah, find the meaning on the next, and yeah, hopefully next video I have more trials, more data to kind of give a more accurate picture of what the situation is. So yeah, on the next.